Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ashley Wadsworth. Ashley Wadsworth was born on July 25, 2002, in Vernon Township, British Columbia, Canada. She was the daughter of Kenneth Wadsworth and Christy Jenden, and had an older sister named Haley. The Wadsworth family was large and close-knit, consisting of over 50 people, including cousins, uncles, and aunts of varying degrees of kinship, all living in the same community. Ashley was a cheerful, outgoing, and energetic girl who was popular and had many friends. She enjoyed outdoor activities such as swimming, horseback riding, and skiing. She was also passionate about tennis and played the clarinet. Ashley was very active on social media, frequently sharing memes, jokes, and photos. It was through social media that Ashley met Jack Seppel in 2015, when she was 12 years old and he was 15. Jack Seppel was born on January 9, 1999. His mother, Tracy Dalton, was married to a man named Ricky. Jack's relationship with his father, who passed away in 2019, was reportedly strained. Jack did not communicate with his brother, Jordan, but he did stay in touch with his sister, Nadia. Apart from his mother and sister, Jack did not have many close relationships, preferring to interact with people primarily through the internet and video games. According to Jack's acquaintances, he had a mixed reputation in school. On the one hand, he was remembered as a charming, fun, and lively kid. On the other hand, they recalled his dark side, which emerged when he became angry and displayed aggressive behavior towards himself and others. A mutual friend introduced Jack to Ashley through social media, a common way for teenagers to meet and form virtual friendships. As their online relationship grew, Ashley and Jack became close virtual friends. At the time, Ashley didn't have a smartphone and used her family's computer to access social media, so her family was aware of her friendship with Jack. During their long-distance friendship, Jack had relationships with other girls, and Ashley also had typical teenage experiences. Although they occasionally stopped communicating, their connection never completely faded, and they continued to stay in touch over the years. As they grew older, Ashley and Jack's relationship evolved. They started communicating through video calls, which led to a more intimate and romantic relationship. Jack became a familiar figure to Ashley's family, who would often greet him warmly when they saw him talking to the guys. He also sent Ashley gifts, such as teddy bears and purses, on multiple occasions. Ashley's family and friends noticed that she had a tendency to compare every boy she met to Jack. However, due to the significant time difference between their locations, Jack lived in Essex, while Ashley was in Vernon. They struggled to find time to talk, often waking up too early and going to bed too late. As Ashley turned 15 in 2018, she began to express a desire to meet Jack in person. However, her family refused to let her travel alone to another continent. Like many young couples, they occasionally argued, and when Ashley would block Jack on social media during these fights, he would find ways to contact her again, creating new accounts or sending messages through his sister or acquaintances. This behavior was seen as disturbing and intrusive by Ashley's loved ones, but she continued to insist that Jack was a kind and compassionate person. In October 2018, Jack, who was 19 at the time, got a tattoo of Ashley's name on his arm when she was just 16. Her parents thought this display of affection was excessive and warned her to be cautious. However, Jack soon began exhibiting jealous and violent behavior. He would become angry if he suspected Ashley was talking to other guys, despite continuing to date other girls himself. He claimed Ashley was his favorite and swore his loyalty to her alone. This incident marked the beginning of a disturbing pattern of behavior. Ashley's friends and family grew increasingly concerned as Jack's behavior escalated. One day, Ashley called a friend who was at Jack's house, and he wouldn't let her leave. According to the friend who overheard the conversation, Ashley surprisingly remained calm, as if she was used to such situations. She simply asked Jack to stop being crazy. Ashley confided in her friends about the incident but didn't tell her parents. However, her friends strongly advised her to cut off all contact with Jack. Despite his history of fights and problematic behavior, Ashley and Jack continued to reconcile. At just 18 years old, Ashley had known Jack since her early teens, but she seemed unaware of the extent to which he had manipulated her from a young age. Ashley started working at fast food restaurants and department stores to save money for leisure activities. Her first purchase was a tablet, which allowed her to use social media more privately. She then began saving for a trip. During her senior year of high school, Ashley, a spiritual and inquisitive person, had a profound moment of insight after reading the Book of Mormon. This led her to start following the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ashley graduated from Sighton High School in 2020. She wanted to experience university life fully, so she decided to take a year-long break before continuing her studies. In the first half of 2021, Ashley continued working in saving money. In April of that year, she was baptized into Mormonism. With her newfound independence and financial stability, Ashley decided to travel to the UK to meet Jack in person and celebrate his birthday with him. Despite her parents' and friends' concerns, Ashley was determined to make the trip, as she was of legal age and had her own savings. Ashley left Canada for the UK on November 12, 2021, on a 6-month tourist visa. This was her first time leaving her homeland, and she was thrilled. The next day, November 13, 2021, Ashley met Jack in person for the first time. On the same day, Ashley updated her profile picture to a photo of them together. At 22 years old, Jack looked significantly older than Ashley, who was 19. His numerous tattoos, including those on his face, created a striking contrast with Ashley's youthful appearance. During her stay in London, Ashley lived with Jack in his house, located in a public housing estate in northwest Chelmsford. The neighborhood had a questionable reputation, but they spent time exploring the nicer areas of the city in Essex. Jack seemed like the same charming and caring person Ashley had met online, often showering her with compliments and taking romantic selfies. However, Jack's behavior was inconsistent, and he could be cruel at times. Despite being together daily, Ashley's tourist visa prevented her from working, and Jack was unemployed, relying on benefits. Occasionally, his mother Tracy, who lived nearby, provided support. Throughout her trip, Ashley regularly posted photos and updates on social media, showcasing their happy moments and romantic experiences. The pictures often featured they embracing, highlighting their seemingly joyful relationship. Ashley kept in regular touch with her family through video calls, and everything seemed fine at first. They even adopted a new kitten, Winston, which was a positive addition to their lives. Nevertheless, over time, Jack started to become more withdrawn and isolated. Ashley's trip to England was supposed to be an exciting adventure, but it quickly turned into a restrictive and isolating experience. Her boyfriend, Jack, had lost interest in exploring the country and instead preferred to stay indoors, smoke, and play video games. As a result, Ashley's options for activities were severely limited, and she was forced to do only what Jack wanted. Before arriving in England, one of Ashley's friends from church had arranged for her to meet some American missionaries who would be in Chelmsford at the same time. Ashley was eager to connect with them, but Jack refused to let her attend church on Sundays. Despite this, she continued to secretly communicate with the missionaries through text messages, deleting the conversations to avoid Jack's suspicion. Ashley's new friends soon realized that Jack was controlling and possibly abusive. When she confided in them about her problems, Ashley admitted that she knew she deserved better, but she was trying to keep Jack happy. However, the abuse went beyond controlling her communication. About 6 weeks into their trip, Jack became violent when he discovered that Ashley had blocked 2 UK phone numbers. He mistakenly believed that the numbers belonged to other men, triggering a jealous outburst. In a disturbing text message to his mother, Jack revealed that he had physically abused Ashley. Ashley created a secret profile where she documented the bruises she had sustained. She confided in her sister Haley about the abuse, but warned her not to tell their mother, fearing that their family would turn against Jack. After Jack overdosed on anti-anxiety medication in late December 2021, Ashley was tasked with overseeing his medication as his caregiver. She kept this responsibility a secret from her mother and friends, but Haley inadvertently revealed the truth. Ashley's mother expressed concern and asked her to return home, but Ashley insisted on staying with Jack until he recovered. In early January 2022, another disturbing incident occurred. Jack smashed a beer glass over Ashley's head, leaving her in tears. While Jack forced her to clean up the broken glass, Ashley contacted her sister via video call, revealing the true extent of her situation. Jack was frantic, pacing back and forth, yelling, and grinding his teeth. His distress prompted Ashley to contact her sister, Haley, who urged her to return home. However, Haley's concerns fell on deaf ears. A brief period of calm followed, marked by Jack's 23rd birthday celebration with his family, where everyone put on a united front and pretended everything was fine. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Jack's mother and stepfather organized a family vacation to a seaside town shortly after. The photos from the trip appeared perfect, showcasing a happy and tranquil Ashley, which brought relief to her parents, who remained unaware of the seriousness of the situation. In late January, an intense argument broke out, and Jack's behavior turned violent once again. He hit Ashley and threw a candle and a TV remote at her while she was video chatting with Haley, who was pleading with her to return home. Although Ashley had initially agreed, she ultimately decided to stay. Despite witnessing Jack's cruel nature, she clung to the hope that the charming person she once knew was still buried deep within him. Ashley was convinced that time, her love, or perhaps medical treatment could help Jack overcome his destructive tendencies, a sentiment that was echoed by her mother during subsequent conversations with Jack. Jack accused Ashley of cheating on him, physically abused her, and later apologized. Despite feeling guilty about his actions, Jack's behavior continued. The situation escalated on the morning of February 1, 2022, when Jack became angry with Ashley again. He accused her of abandoning him and seeing other people in secret. He demanded to see her phone and check her social media accounts to prove his allegations. Around 8 a.m., their neighbor Haley Borton Shaw heard Ashley's screams through the shared wall. Ashley soon showed up at Jack's doorstep, drawing attention to the distressing situation unfolding between them. Haley was shocked and Ashley appeared at her door, barefoot and crying, with a cut on her palm that was bleeding. Ashley explained that Jack had become enraged when he caught her looking at intimate photos of them. He had verbally abused her, physically attacked her, smashed her phone, and thrown her kitten against the wall. Despite Haley's concerns for Ashley's safety and fear that Jack might try to harm her, Ashley asked Haley not to call the police. Haley reluctantly agreed, but begged Ashley to see a doctor instead of returning to Jack's apartment. When Ashley refused, Haley decided to go and talk to Jack herself. During their conversation, Jack apologized for his actions and remained calm. Haley then left for a doctor's appointment around 9 a.m. Meanwhile, Jack's neighbor received a misdelivered package and brought it to his doorstep. Jack was hesitant to answer the door, which wasn't unusual since he was known to be an unfriendly and paranoid person. Around this time, Ashley called her family using Jack's cell phone, informing them of her situation. Ashley's mother was already aware of what was going on because Haley had previously confided in her about Jack's abusive behavior towards Ashley. Ashley's parents immediately bought her a return ticket for February 3rd to escape the abusive relationship. When she informed Jack, he offered to drive her to the airport. However, before she left, Ashley's mother made it clear that if Jack hurt her again, she would contact the police. She also advised Ashley to go straight to the airport if Jack assaulted her again. The conversation between Ashley and her family lasted for 3 hours before they ended the call. It was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford and 3 a.m. in Vernon when the call ended. A short time later, Jack sent a message to his mother, admitting to brutally beating Ashley again. During the assault, Ashley fell to the floor and possibly broke her arm. This violent incident occurred between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 a.m. Ashley managed to send several messages to her family and friends using Jack's phone, but since it was nighttime, no one responded immediately. She also reached out to her friends at the church in Chelmsford, asking for help and describing the emergency. Unfortunately, these messages were not received until hours later, when it was too late to intervene. Between 12:38 and 12:45, Jack violently attacked Ashley, choking her until she lost consciousness. He then proceeded to the kitchen, retrieved an 11-centimeter knife, and repeatedly stabbed Ashley's chest and stomach around 100 times, ultimately ending her life. Following the attack, Jack updated his social media profile picture with a photo of himself and Ashley, accompanied by the caption, "Always mine." He also recorded a video message for Haley, expressing his love for Ashley, apologizing, and stating that he couldn't let her go, adding that his mental state was unstable. The video, which was never sent, showed Ashley's body next to him. Meanwhile, in Vernon, Ashley's family discovered a large number of messages from her on their phones. They immediately contacted Jamie Ashworth, a family friend from their Mormon community in Chelmsford. Jamie and Tyler Borden, another acquaintance from the church, went to Jack's apartment in England. After knocking on the door and receiving no response, they called the police and left the scene. In a desperate attempt to cover his tracks, Jack texted Ashley's family and friends, pretending to be her. However, the messages from loved ones continued to pour in, and Jack ignored them. Meanwhile, they were frantically trying to reach Ashley. Eventually, Jack called his sister Nadia and confessed to killing Ashley, even going so far as to show her the body. This disturbing conversation took place at approximately 4:13 p.m. When the police arrived at the apartment 10 minutes after Jamie's call, they found that the situation had already turned tragic. They arrested Jack, who was covered in blood, on the spot. He told the officers that he had experienced a psychotic episode and confessed to the crime. As a result, he was taken into custody and sent to Chelmsford Prison. His trial was scheduled for September 7, 2022, at Chelmsford Crown Court. The court's psychiatric examination concluded that Jack was mentally fit to stand trial. However, the evidence against him was irrefutable, including a video recording of him admitting to the crime. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Jack immediately pleaded guilty. The judge then informed him that, given his confession, a life imprisonment sentence was inevitable. At the hearing, which took place under Judge Edward Murray at Chelmsford Crown Court, prosecutor Simon Spence detailed Jack's extensive criminal history, which dated back to his teenage years. During the hearing, Ashley's parents learned the disturbing truth about Jack. Jack had a history of run-ins with the law, including arrests for stalking, kidnapping, and violent assault. He had also been issued multiple restraining orders, including against his mother and former girlfriend. The revelation of Jack's extensive criminal record shocked and devastated Ashley's parents, who had never suspected the true nature of the man who had taken their daughter's life. During the hearing, the prosecution and defense discussed a letter written by Jack from prison, in which he apologized for his actions. The letter was later released to the media by Judge Murray, who cited the importance of transparency in the justice system. In the letter, Jack expressed regret to Ashley's family, especially her mother and sister Haley, acknowledging that nothing could undo the harm he had caused. Jack accepted responsibility for his actions and acknowledged that his mental state contributed to the tragedy. He also claimed to have previously discussed his mental health with Ashley. Ultimately, Jack was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christy Wilson. Christy Wilson was born on January 10, 1978, in San Jose, California. She attended Gunderson High School and later earned a business degree from California State University, Chico. Her parents, Debbie Boyd and Patrick Boyd, described her as an exceptional student and athlete. After college, Christy landed a job at a tech company near Sacramento, where she worked until the high-tech crisis led to her job loss. In her free time, she enjoyed playing blackjack at a local casino, where she met her boyfriend, Danny Berlando. Initially, Christy's relationship with Danny was quite harmonious, and her family and friends thought they made a great couple. However, things took a turn for the worse after they moved to Sacramento together. Christy started showing up with bruises, but she wouldn't talk about how she got them. Following her job loss, Christy returned to her parents' home in San Jose. She eventually received a job offer in San Francisco and decided to start fresh. On October 4, 2005, Christy Wilson went to Sacramento to collect her remaining belongings. However, just 2 days later, her boyfriend Danny Berlando contacted her parents to report that she had vanished. He claimed to have searched for her by contacting local jails, hospitals, and friends before reaching out to them. The police were also informed about Christy's disappearance. According to Danny, Christy visited his apartment on October 4th. He then went to dinner with his family, while Christy went to the Thunder Valley Casino. This was the last time he saw her. It's worth noting that Danny's family didn't get along with Christy, which is why he attended the family dinner without her. The tension between their families was due to concerns about Christy's safety. Christy's family had noticed bruises on her body, suggesting that Danny had been physically abusing her. Christy's stepfather, Patrick Boyd, was particularly upset when he found out about the abuse. He wanted to confront Danny, but Christy's mother, Debbie Boyd, intervened to prevent a confrontation. Danny Berlando was 31 years old when Christy disappeared. He had recently lost his job as a car salesman. About a month prior to Christy's disappearance, the police were called to their residence after neighbors reported hearing Christy screaming. Although the police found that they had been arguing, they made up quickly and no further action was taken. When Christy went missing, Danny was the primary suspect due to their previous altercation. His decision to wait nearly 48 hours before reporting her missing to the police raised suspicions that he might have used this time to destroy evidence. However, Danny cooperated fully with the investigation, allowing police to examine his phone records, credit card activity, computer, apartment, and car. Despite being a suspect, no evidence of foul play was found. Danny had an alibi for the time Christy went missing, having attended a family dinner. Before reporting her disappearance, he attempted to contact Christy 78 times, but she did not answer. The police interviewed Christy's friends and family, and reviewed her phone and credit card activities, but found no activity on her bank account since October 4th. Christy's family and the police worked together to find her. They searched the area with dogs, volunteers, and a police helicopter. Her family asked people to share any information they had about Christy's whereabouts. Danny searched for Christy on his own and visited the Thunder Valley Casino. The casino staff couldn't give him any useful information. However, he found Christy's car in the parking lot. The investigators arrived at the casino and confirmed Christy's car was still in the parking lot. This finding caused confusion rather than answers. There were no signs of a fight or other suspicious activities around her car. The big questions were whether Christie left the casino on her own and why her car remained there. Detectives reviewed security footage inside and outside the casino, hoping to understand what had happened. At the same time, the police conducted another search of Christie and Danny's apartment, but it yielded no results. Meanwhile, Christie's stepfather, Patrick, a police officer, organized a search of a nearby river, but nothing was found. The investigation shifted its focus to Thunder Valley Casino, where Christie was last seen. Using her player's card, investigators tracked her movements and discovered that she played blackjack around 11 p.m. The casino's recordings showed Christie sitting at a table with a man, but Danny was nowhere to be seen. The man and Christie appeared to be communicating, congratulating each other on wins and offering comfort when they lost. They spent about 6 hours together at the casino, during which the man was seen putting his hand on Christie's shoulder. Christie had a night of mixed results. She began well, winning and keeping a good count of the cards. However, as the evening progressed, her luck turned, and she started to lose. As she consumed more drinks, Christie became increasingly agitated and lost control. The casino staff eventually asked her to leave, but the man intervened, saying, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this beauty." Shortly after, the man and Christie left the casino together, as captured on camera. During a visit to Thunder Valley, detectives made a significant discovery when casino employees found a mobile phone under a blackjack table. The phone belonged to Christie, and it's possible she had unknowingly dropped it. This development hindered the police's plan to track Christie's location through her phone. Further investigation of the CCTV footage revealed that Christie and a man she had met at the casino left the blackjack table and went to the parking lot 4 minutes later. A white car, later identified as belonging to the man, left the parking lot, while Christie's vehicle remained in place. The detective suspected that Christie might have left with the man in his car. The police needed to determine whether Christie had willingly accompanied the man or if he had forced her into the car. After analyzing players' card data, detectives identified the man as Mario Flavio Garcia, a 53-year-old family man from Auburn with a successful IT career. As the investigation progressed, the detectives discovered that the white car seen in the CCTV footage belonged to Mario Garcia, making him the primary suspect in Christie's disappearance. However, the footage showed that Mario Garcia appeared to be alone in the car when he left the parking lot, and Christie never returned to her vehicle. Mario Garcia had stayed in the parking lot for 3 minutes and 41 seconds, raising questions about what might have occurred between him and Christie during that time. Detectives investigating Mario Garcia's life discovered a stark contrast between his public and private persona. While he was a respected community member and football coach, he also had a dark history. 25 years prior, Mario had been arrested for kidnapping his ex-girlfriend, taking her to a secluded location, and forcing her into a sexual act at gunpoint. Despite the severity of the crime, the case was plea bargained down to assault with a deadly weapon, resulting in a lenient sentence of 18 months probation. This was not the only instance where Mario's caught the attention of police. In another incident, Mario was involved in a tumultuous relationship with Lynette Smith. In 1979, Mario, Lynette, and her mother, Violet Davis, spent Christmas together. After dinner, the three of them got into Lynette's car, which subsequently crashed into a river near Oakland Airport. Mario, the sole survivor, claimed Lynette was driving, but investigators could not confirm this. Violet Davis's body was found in a car, while Lynette's body was not recovered until a week later. The incident was initially believed to be an accident, and no one was charged in connection with the deaths. After collecting the available information, investigators interviewed Mario about Christie Wilson. He maintained he was unaware of her disappearance and stated that they left the casino together, parted ways politely after exchanging goodbyes, and went in different directions. Although he claimed to have headed home immediately, his words couldn't be confirmed or disputed through the casino's CCTV footage. Nonetheless, by reviewing security recordings from surrounding locations, investigators ascertained Mario lied. CCTV evidence outside of the casino caught Mario heading the opposite way of his claimed direction after they were separated. Mario claimed to have gone straight home and fallen asleep at 8:30 a.m. after leaving the casino. However, his wife refused to cooperate with the police, leaving detectives unable to verify his alibi. A review of Mario's cell phone records revealed discrepancies in his story. A call to his wife at 7:51 a.m. was made from a cell tower located far from his house, indicating he did not go home immediately after the casino. Mario also stated that he arrived at work at 9 a.m., but a colleague reported that he was late, arriving around 10 a.m. Further investigation revealed that Mario had scratches on his arm and a bruise under one eye the day after Christy Wilson's disappearance. When questioned, Mario attributed the injuries to a fall from a tree while pruning. However, detectives were skeptical of this explanation, as it is unlikely that someone would prune trees at night. The police asked a forensic expert to examine Mario Garcia's injuries. The expert found that the scratches on Mario's face and body didn't match the kind of injuries you'd get from falling out of a tree. There were 4 parallel scratches on his face, and 3 more on the left side of his chest. This was suspicious because Christy Wilson was right-handed. The police suspected Mario was involved in Christy's disappearance, so they got a search warrant for his car, home, and computer. Mario had claimed he went home after saying goodbye to Christy in the parking lot, but as investigators searched his car, they started to think Christy was probably dead. Mario had tried to clean up his car, washing both the inside and outside, and even throwing away the trunk mat. However, he hadn't been able to get rid of all the evidence. Initially, investigators found a small, unremarkable spot on the car seat that was later confirmed to be blood. However, the sample was not suitable for DNA analysis. Further examination of the vehicle revealed 2 long hairs and small blood splatters on the back door of the trunk. The hairs were matched to the missing person, Christy. Further examination of the bloodstains showed that they contained DNA from both Mario and Christy, which disagreed with Mario's statement that he and Christy had separated in the parking lot. This evidence suggested a physical altercation between Mario and Christy. A review of Mario's search history showed that he had been researching forensic toxicology and visiting websites that described how to secretly administer drugs to someone's drink on a date. This led investigators to suspect that Christy may have been a random victim who was targeted by Mario after they sat together at a table. It was possible that Mario had spiked her drink. To prove this, the police needed to find Christy's body. A thorough search of Garcia's 5-acre property was conducted, but unfortunately, no new leads were discovered. Mario Garcia was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder despite the absence of Christy Wilson's body. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial, which began on September 11, 2006. Prosecutors presented evidence suggesting that Mario had met Christy at a blackjack table, left the casino with her, attacked and killed her, and then hid her body. During the trial, Mario questioned the validity of the evidence, pointing out that only Christy's DNA was found on his car door, while the DNA of his family members and others who had been in the car was not detected. He suggested that the police had planted Christy's DNA as evidence. Mario stated to the court that he would not request leniency or pardon, claiming that he was innocent and did not commit the crime. However, the jury found him guilty on January 11, 2007, and he was sentenced to 59 years to life in prison. After the sentencing, Christy's family held out hope that Mario Garcia would finally reveal the location of her body. However, he refused to cooperate. As the years went by, the family struggled to move on with their lives, which had been forever changed by the traumatic experience. Mario's repeated appeals only added to their distress, despite being unsuccessful. The ongoing appeals prevented the family from finding closure and moving on with their lives. In 2018, Mario offered to provide information about Christie's body in exchange for an early release from prison. However, Christie's mother, Debbie Boyd, was unwilling to negotiate with him. She felt that using her daughter's body as a bargaining chip would be unacceptable. The police then turned to Mario's family for assistance, knowing that his ex-wife, Jean, had divorced him after his imprisonment. Jean eventually lost faith in her ex-husband and began to suspect that he was involved in Christie's disappearance and death. As part of their investigation, police spoke with Mario Garcia's sons, Chris and Andy, asking them to recall any details about the days surrounding Christie's disappearance and their father's subsequent arrest. The police were particularly interested in learning about any changes in Mario's behavior during that time. Chris remembered that he had a football game around that time and saw his father working frantically on a tractor on their plot. Mario's eyes had a wild, frantic look that caught Chris off guard. When Chris asked his father to attend his game, Mario firmly refused, saying he's not going. This response struck Chris as out of character for his father. At the request of investigators, Chris accompanied them to his childhood home. Chris showed them the exact location where he had seen his father working on the tractor, which was next to a detached garage near the road, approximately 100 yards from the Mario residence. It became clear that Mario had made a significant effort to conceal any evidence, taking advantage of the 4 or 5 days he had to cover his tracks. Notably, police had previously searched the Mario property with police dogs in 2005, but had found nothing at the time. In a new development, investigators took a different approach in August 2020. They hired a company that specializes in ground-penetrating radar technology to scan the 5-acre property owned by Mario Garcia. The technicians identified 8 potential locations with voids or pockets beneath the surface. After digging at the first 2 sites, they found nothing. However, at the 3rd location, which was the same spot where Mario Garcia had been digging with a tractor, the police discovered a skeleton. Further examination confirmed that the remains belonged to Christy Wilson, 15 years after she went missing. Although the exact cause of Christy's death remains unknown, experts determined that she had suffered a broken arm and nose. The investigators, who had been working on the case for 15 years, traveled to Arizona to personally inform Christy's mother, Debbie Boyd, about the discovery. The news brought a mix of sadness and relief to Christy's family, who could finally find closure and say goodbye to their daughter. Placer County Sheriff Devin Bell announced that Christy Wilson's case has been solved, thanks to efforts by his team. This was achieved without the cooperation of Mario Garcia, a convicted murderer who is currently in prison. Mario, 67, had refused to provide any information to help the family find closure. According to Christy's mother, Debbie Boyd, this news brings her family peace and marks the end of a painful chapter. She praised the perseverance of the police and thanked them for their tireless efforts. Notably, Mario had died of pneumonia in 2020, but even his death had brought some peace to the family. Mario had never pleaded guilty to any involvement in Christy's disappearance, despite her remains being found on Mario's plot in 2005. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Dana Ireland. Dana Marie Ireland was born on December 12, 1968, in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, to John Ireland and Mary Louise Crank. She was the youngest daughter, with an older sister, Sandra, who was 7 years her senior. In 1991, when Dana was 23, she visited her sister in Hawaii with her parents. On December 24th, Dana borrowed her sister's bike for a ride. However, she never returned. Her bike, shoe, and a clump of hair were later found on the side of the road, but Dana was nowhere to be seen. The condition of the bike suggested that Dana had been struck by a vehicle. The impact was severe, causing significant damage to the bike's wheels and steering wheel. Unfortunately, hopes that the driver who hit Dana had taken her to the hospital were short-lived. Tragically, Dana was found 5 miles from where her bike was discovered. She had suffered severe injuries to her body and head, and her lower body was exposed. The evidence suggested that Dana had not only been hit by a car but had also been taken advantage of while she was vulnerable. Nurse Jerry Gallagher is haunted by a traumatic event that occurred on Christmas Eve 1991. A friend, Brian, arrived at her home on Satellite Road in a rural area 25 miles southeast of Hilo. He had found she, Dana Ireland, severely injured and in need of medical attention. Gallagher, who was licensed to provide care, accompanied Brian to the scene, just a mile from her house. Upon arrival, she found Dana lying on the ground, naked from the waist down, with severe bruises on the inner sides of her legs. Gallagher attempted to administer first aid using a kit, but Dana's most critical injury was a severe head wound on the back of her skull. When Gallagher inquired about her identity, Dana's response was incoherent, seeming to utter the words, "is land." Gallagher then asked who was responsible for her condition, but Dana's answers remained unclear. Dana did, however, repeatedly request Gallagher to return her keys so she could drive home. Gallagher made an effort to keep her awake while awaiting further assistance. Due to the area's lack of phone services, significant delays occurred before an ambulance finally arrived more than 2 hours after the initial call for help. Moreover, further complications arose when the emergency services dispatcher mistakenly relayed the wrong location for the incident. These factors collectively resulted in an additional 34-minute delay for Dana to receive the medical attention she required. Gallagher had considered driving Dana to the hospital himself, but she was worried that moving her could cause further injury. She has since struggled with the decision and the fact that it took so long for help to arrive. An ambulance finally brought Dana to Hilo Hospital at 7:56 p.m. Unbeknownst to her parents, John and Mary Louise, who were searching for her, Dana was the injured woman being treated at the hospital. They had found her damaged bicycle by the side of the road and were trying to locate her. At the time, Mary thought someone had hit Dana and taken her to the hospital. John stayed near the bike while Mary and their eldest daughter Sandra went to the hospital to look for Dana. When the ambulance arrived with Dana, Mary and Sandra were already there. Despite the doctor's best efforts, they were unable to save Dana. She was pronounced dead at 12:25 a.m. due to severe injuries sustained in a motor vehicle accident, including blood loss and trauma to her head, pelvis, and abdomen. Dana's family was shocked by her death, which permanently altered their lives. As time passed, they would face another challenge, a long and arduous search for suspects and subsequent trials. The police investigation was described by local newspapers as intense. They discovered a T-shirt at the crime scene that belonged to the perpetrator. They also seized a sheet from the hospital with semen stains on it, which was crucial evidence since Dana had semen on her body when she was admitted. Furthermore, a bite mark on Dana's body matched the teeth print of her attacker. The authorities obtained a DNA sample from the perpetrator, but this was of limited use in 1991. The tire tracks from the bike and the secluded area where it was found provided few leads. Despite interviewing residents, the investigators could not find any witnesses who saw the car that hit Dana's bike, likely due to the remote location and poor road conditions, which deterred cars from traveling there frequently. The investigation into the Dana Ireland case had reached a dead end due to a lack of witnesses and evidence. However, a breakthrough occurred when John Gonzalez contacted the Hawaii County Police in May 1994. Gonzalez was involved in a high-profile case involving illegal substances, but he received a suspended sentence due to his cooperation with the police. Gonzalez revealed that his half-brother, Frank Pauline, had important information about the Dana Ireland case. Frank Pauline stated that brothers Albert Ian Schweitzer and Sean Schweitzer were involved in the attack on Dana Ireland. The Schweitzer family lived next door to the Frank Pauline family, and their families did not get along. According to Frank Pauline, he was present when the Schweitzers attacked Dana Ireland. They allegedly ran her over, put her in the trunk, and took her to another location. Based on Frank Pauline's statements, the police made Albert Schweitzer, Sean Schweitzer, and Frank Pauline the main suspects in the case. Frank Pauline Jr. was born on April 27, 1973, in Fremont, California, to Frank Sr. and Patricia Pauline. He grew up in Puna, Hawaii, where he became a father of 3 sons by the age of 20. However, Frank had a history of run-ins with the law, starting at the age of 9. By February 8, 1983, Frank Pauline had been caught in a burglary. As he got older, the severity of his crimes increased. In February 1994, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for harassment and robbery. Despite this, Pauline continued to commit crimes, earning him the nickname "Walking Crime Wave" from prosecutors. After being sentenced, Pauline was taken into custody to start his prison term. However, he managed to escape and was classified as a fugitive. He was eventually recaptured in Honolulu a few days later. 3 months after Pauline received a 10-year sentence, his brother John Gonzalez contacted the authorities and provided information about the Dana Ireland case. Pauline and Gonzalez decided to cooperate with the investigation, which could potentially reduce Pauline's sentence. John Gonzalez was initially a questionable source of information, but after speaking with investigators, the case against him for illegal substances was closed, and he received a suspended sentence. Pauline claimed to have information about the Dana Ireland case and was interrogated by investigators from the Big Island. The 90-minute interrogation took place in Honolulu, where Pauline was in custody. During the interrogation, Pauline provided details about the attack on Dana Ireland and reconstructed the crime scene on the Big Island, showing detectives the locations he mentioned earlier. Pauline told detectives that on December 24, 1991, brothers Albert Ian and Sean Schweitzer picked him up at his home in a purple Volkswagen Beetle. Albert Ian was driving. Before they saw a woman on the side of the road, they stopped to take illegal substances. As they approached an intersection near Kapaho, they saw she standing on the side of the road. Pauline recalled Albert Ian pointing her out, saying, "Look at that girl," but they initially continued driving. Albert Ian then suggested turning the car around so he could talk to she. As they drove back, traveling at 40 to 45 miles per hour, Albert Ian failed to stop in time and accidentally hit she, later identified as Dana Ireland. After hitting Dana, the trio got out of the car, loaded her into the trunk, and continued driving. A short distance later, they stopped and removed Dana from the car. Despite being injured, she was still alive. Pauline claimed he did not assault Dana, unlike the Schweitzer brothers. However, he said something that had severe consequences. According to Pauline, Albert Ian insisted that he find a tire iron and hit Dana on the head to end her suffering. Pauline's initial statement to the police was written down and he signed it, confirming that he testified voluntarily, without coercion, threats, or influence from substances. He was later moved to the Maui Community Correctional Center for protection due to threats from fellow inmates. However, 2 years later, Pauline retracted his statement, claiming he fabricated his story at his stepbrother's request to avoid jail. He admitted he was not present during the attack but had information about those responsible. Pauline explained that he lied about being there to make his information credible and to avoid being accused of perjury, but perjury was not one of the charges he faced. On July 30, 1997, Frank Pauline was charged with the murder of Dana Ireland after signing a confession claiming he had struck her with a tire iron. However, the confession raised suspicions, as when investigators took him to the Big Island, he was unable to identify the exact location of the crime or where Dana's body was found. This led investigators to question the truthfulness of Pauline's confession. Pauline eventually retracted his confession, fearing that if he continued to lie, he could be charged with perjury. His retraction was motivated in part by his realization that his half-brother, Albert Gonzalez, was innocent and being wrongly accused. In the end, Gonzalez was able to avoid major charges related to a separate crime, and in exchange, he agreed to testify against Pauline at his trial. At the time of the arrest, DNA testing technology was not as advanced as it is today. Despite this, the authorities collected DNA samples from Pauline and the Schweitzer brothers. They also analyzed biological fluids from the gurney sheet used to transport Dana Ireland to the hospital and swabs from her body. However, the results were unexpected. The DNA of Frank Pauline and the Schweitzer brothers did not match the DNA of the perpetrator. Although the charges against the three men were dropped, the investigation continued. The prosecution suggested that someone else must have been involved, as other evidence also failed to implicate Pauline and the Schweitzer brothers. For example, the teeth of the Schweitzer brothers and Pauline did not match the bite mark found on the victim's chest. Furthermore, no traces of Dana Ireland's blood or hair were found in Albert Ian Schweitzer's Volkswagen, which he had acquired only a month after her death. External pressures, including those from the Dana Ireland family, the public, and the press, may have influenced the course of events in the investigation into Dana Ireland's death. Albert Ian Schweitzer was 20 years old at the time of Dana Ireland's murder and had only traffic-related infractions on his record. Sean Schweitzer, who was 16 when Dana Ireland died, received charges in connection with her death at the age of 23. Around that time, Sean also faced unrelated charges of fourth-degree assault for inappropriately touching a 15-year-old girl when he was 16. He received a sentence of 180 days in prison and 1 year of probation. Despite their records showing a pattern of questionable behavior, DNA testing cleared all three suspects involved in the Dana Ireland case of her murder. However, this finding was likely undermined by the unrelated convictions that surfaced in their pasts. 5 days after Frank Pauline's initial statement to the police, investigators searched the Schweitzer family home and seized Albert Ian's 1957 Volkswagen Beetle as evidence. Both Sean and Albert Ian claimed they were not with Frank Pauline on the night of the crime, although they admitted to knowing him. Sean stated that he was at home on Christmas Eve, while Albert Ian said he was either at home or at his uncle's house. Albert Ian also explained how he acquired his car, initially denying that he had done any bodywork on it. He revealed that the car was originally purple, but he repainted it yellow because it wasn't his preferred color. The Schweitzer brothers' lawyers believed that Frank Pauline had falsely accused them due to a long-standing feud between their families. Nevertheless, the prosecution continued to pursue the case. On May 5, 1999, just days before the statute of limitations expired for some of the crimes committed against Dana Ireland, the police received a statement from Michael Ortiz, a cellmate of the Schweitzers and an associate of Gonzalez. This new information was seen as a potential breakthrough in the case. During questioning by authorities, Michael Ortiz claimed that Albert Ian Schweitzer had confessed to his involvement in the crime. Based on this testimony, Frank Pauline and the Schweitzer brothers were recharged in connection with Dana Ireland's death just 2 weeks later. This development raised suspicions and distrust among the public, as the information had come from a questionable source and had been revealed just days before the statute of limitations was set to expire. Frank Pauline was the first to face trial. The proceedings were highly emotional. Pauline professed his innocence, stating that he had lied when he initially confessed to being involved in Dana's murder. When taking the stand, Mary Ireland recounted receiving the devastating news about her daughter. She described the distressing scene: a bicycle on the road, a shoe, and a lock of hair. However, the witnesses who linked Pauline to the crime had checkered pasts and stood to gain from implicating him. Among those who benefited from Pauline being found guilty was his half-brother, Gonzalez, who became a witness for the prosecution. Witness William Chung, who also testified against Pauline, said Pauline confessed his involvement in this crime. However, when asked if he saw Pauline in the courtroom, he pointed to another person, although Frank Pauline was there. The jury also saw Dana Ireland's bike, shorts, top, underwear, and a Jimmy's t-shirt recovered from the scene. Not one of those items had DNA from Pauline or the Schweitzers. To get around the lack of scientific evidence, Deputy Prosecutor Lincoln Ashida insisted that the Jimmy's t-shirt covered in Dana Ireland's blood belonged to Pauline. "We're not afraid of that evidence. We embrace it," Ashida said. Then, that same DNA technology works both ways for the defense and the prosecution. Pauline's lawyer protested, saying the t-shirt wasn't even Frank's size. Nevertheless, the jury found that the evidence and assumptions presented at the trial were enough to convict Pauline. Pauline's guilty verdict and 180-year sentence were handed down despite forensic evidence proving his confession was false. The next trial was that of Albert Ian Schweitzer, who knew about Pauline's sentence and was surprised when prosecutors offered him a plea deal, given the lack of physical evidence. Albert Ian Schweitzer rejected the offer, maintaining his innocence. The prosecutor claimed Schweitzer's Volkswagen Beetle was involved in the crime, but several facts contradicted this assertion. Witnesses in the area where Dana was found reported seeing a pickup truck, not the Beetle, and forensic analysis of Schweitzer's car turned up no evidence linking it to the crime. Furthermore, Schweitzer only became the official owner of the Volkswagen in January 1992. Albert Ian Schweitzer was sentenced to 130 years in prison based on the testimony of Michael Ortiz, who claimed Albert Ian had confessed to the crime, and evidence of scratches on Albert Ian's car bumper. After seeing his brother convicted, Sean Schweitzer initially wanted to prove his innocence but eventually decided to take a plea deal due to concerns about the justice system failing him again. As part of his agreement with the prosecutor's office, Sean Schweitzer was required to testify against his brother and Frank Pauline, who were accused of playing a role in Dana Ireland's death. He was also required to take a polygraph test to prove his honesty. The polygraph test was administered on March 24, 2000, by an examiner from the State Attorney General's office. However, the test results showed that Sean was not truthful about his involvement in the crime. Despite this, he was still allowed to plead guilty to the lesser charges of kidnapping and involuntary deprivation of life. There was a discrepancy in the court records regarding the polygraph test results. Deputy Prosecutor Lincoln Ashida initially stated that Sean had failed the test, but later claimed that he had passed it. Sean was ultimately sentenced to 5 years probation, with credit for 18 months served. In an interview after his release, Sean stated that the decision to accept the plea deal was made by his family, who were concerned about the potential impact on his parents if both brothers were imprisoned. His brother, Albert Ian, who was later sentenced to 130 years in prison, recalled advising Sean to accept the deal to avoid serving life in prison, as imprisonment of both brothers might have been too stressful for their parents. Years later, Sean still feels remorseful for testifying against his brother and making a deal with the prosecutor. He and his family have struggled to move on from the case, and Sean has had a hard time finding a job due to the community's knowledge of the case. Community members made remarks about the case for years, causing Sean to experience disappointment and frustration. After being wrongfully convicted, Albert Ian Schweitzer and his family refused to give up the fight. In 2005, Albert Ian applied to the Innocence Project, an organization dedicated to re-examining convictions using new evidence and investigative techniques. The case eventually gained momentum in 2010 when students from the University of Hawaii, lawyers, and professors started re-investigating the old files from the Dana Ireland case. Local prosecutors authorized the investigation, which has spanned several years. Throughout this process, efforts continued to deliver the desired outcome, justice for Albert Ian. The goal was to rectify a miscarriage of justice and bring about restitution. The investigation's findings and the subsequent actions taken will bring truth and closure to the matter. Ultimately, the hope is that justice will prevail and the issue will be laid to rest. Years passed and Mary Louise Ireland, Dana's mother, eventually passed away on her 92nd birthday in 2016. Meanwhile, Linda battled breast cancer, which made it difficult for her to visit her son, Albert Ian. When Linda finally had the chance to see Albert Ian for the very last time, she was heartbroken. During this emotionally charged visit, Albert Ian expressed a final wish to his mother. He didn't want her to leave him, and the thought of saying goodbye was unbearable. He had always found it hard to see the people he loved leave, especially after losing his grandmother. Albert Ian confided in his mother that it was his greatest fear, losing those closest to him, and that he never wanted to have to say goodbye to her again. A DNA expert, Nancy Dinh, testified at the trial after retesting evidence using advanced methods that were not available during the original trials. She explained that technology has improved significantly since 2000, allowing for the detection of details that were previously invisible. Contrary to the 2000 authorities' claim that Frank Pauline's and the Schweitzer brothers' DNA was not on the T-shirt due to excessive amounts of Dana Ireland's blood, scientists from the Innocence Project used modern technology to distinguish between Dana's DNA and other DNA on the T-shirt. They also found seminal fluid and sweat from the armpit on the T-shirt. Nancy Dinh confirmed that the DNA found on the T-shirt and Dana's body belonged to the same person. However, she stated that this person was neither Frank Pauline nor one of the Schweitzer brothers. Following Nancy Dinh's testimony, a tire tread expert remotely testified, stating that the tire tracks found at both crime scenes could not have been made by the Schweitzer brothers' Volkswagen. In his opinion, the tracks were likely left by a larger vehicle, such as a truck, SUV, or van. The final witness to testify was dentist Adam Freeman. Dana Ireland had what appeared to be a human bite mark on her left breast, according to the prosecutor's initial assessment. However, forensic expert Freeman disputed this claim, stating it was not a bite mark. This case highlights the flaws in forensic science, particularly in the analysis of bite marks, Freeman testified. After the witnesses finished testifying, District Court Judge Peter Kubota delivered his verdict. He stated that the new DNA evidence, along with the tire tread evidence, the disputed bite mark evidence, and Sean Schweitzer's recantation, collectively proved that a jury in a new trial would likely find Albert Ian Schweitzer not guilty. Therefore, Kubota declared the conviction vacated and ordered Mr. Albert Ian Schweitzer's immediate release from custody. With these words, spoken 23 years after Albert Ian Schweitzer's guilty verdict and 25 years after his arrest, Albert Ian was suddenly exonerated and freed. Judge Kubota then addressed Albert Ian Schweitzer with heartfelt words. With 1/3 of his life still ahead of him, the judge offered a choice: to live in anger and resentment towards the process and the people who had wronged him, or to find a new sense of freedom. Kubota suggested that Albert Ian make the most of this opportunity, surrounded by his family, who had come to support him. Freed from his handcuffs, Albert Ian hugged his lawyers and then his family members, including some he had not seen in decades. His mother was overcome with emotion in his arms. Albert Ian's young son, who had grown up without his father, was also in the courtroom and shared a hug with him. His younger brother, Sean, was there too, with a warm smile and open arms. As a result of Albert Ian's acquittal, his brother Sean's lawyer is now seeking to have his own criminal record cleared. The story serves as a reminder of the tragic fate of Frank Pauline, who died in prison in New Mexico in 2015. Pauline was attacked by a fellow inmate, Daniel Hood, who was serving time for taking 2 lives. On April 27, 2015, who'd attacked Pauline in the recreation yard at the Southern New Mexico Correctional Facility, striking him 3 times on the back of the head with a rock. The motive behind the attack was Hood's belief that Pauline was a snitch. Despite efforts by the medical staff, Pauline could not be saved. In response, his family's lawyer plans to file a petition for his posthumous rehabilitation. Albert Ian Schweitzer finds the transition from prison life to freedom extremely difficult. He shares that adjusting to life outside of prison has been more challenging than he anticipated. Most days are a struggle with anxiety. While Albert Ian may be eligible for compensation for wrongful imprisonment, which could award him $50,000 for each year spent in prison, the process is not straightforward. His lawyers are working diligently to ensure he receives the compensation he is owed. The Dana Ireland case remains unsolved 3 decades later, but investigators are hopeful that advances in DNA testing and genealogy will help them identify the person responsible for destroying the Dana family's life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rachel Keeley. Rachel was the eldest of 4 children born to John and Rose Keeley. The family consisted of 3 girls and 1 boy, and they were members of the Jehovah's Witness community. They lived in the Inishmore housing estate, which is located near the entrance to the regional park. Rachel was highly involved in her local congregation and devoted to her faith. After completing her education at Ballincollig Community School, she pursued a career as a beautician. This was a deliberate choice, as it would allow her more time to engage in missionary work with the local Jehovah's Witness community. In the summer of 2000, Rachel took a trip with one of her sisters to work as an au pair, but she soon returned home. She was known as a kind and gentle girl, and she had a boyfriend who was part of her Jehovah's Witness social circle. On Thursday, the 26th of October 2000, Rachel left her home around 4:30 p.m. with her 2 dogs to take them for a walk in the regional park in Ballincollig. She was very familiar with this park, and even though it was getting dark, she would not have thought twice about going there, as she knew the area well and expected there to be other people around at that time. She had only planned to be gone for about an hour, and her mother would have had her dinner ready when she got back, as she had a Bible study that night and would be going straight out again after dinner. But around an hour later, after Rachel left, her mother Rose heard scratching at the back door. It was the 2 dogs, but no Rachel. It was deemed straight away that something was wrong, and Rose and her youngest daughter Elizabeth headed straight to the park to look for Rachel on the path they knew she usually took, but there was no sign of her. By 7 p.m., the family contacted the police. Friends and family all headed out looking for Rachel again. Rose bought flashlights from the local shop so they could see, as it was pitch dark by now. Nearing 8 p.m. that night, a close family friend would find Rachel dead in the undergrowth, not far from the walking track. She was found fully clothed, face down in the fetal position, covered with some briars and branches from trees. The emergency team were notified, but at this point, it was obvious that Rachel was dead. The police immediately initiated an investigation. An intent was placed around the body of Rachel, and 6 police officers stood guard over the body until the state pathologist, Dr. Harbison, could arrive at the scene to examine the body. Rachel's mother would later say in interviews that this gave her great comfort, knowing that her daughter was not alone and that she was protected in death, even if they couldn't protect her in life. When Dr. Harbison arrived, he spent 3 hours examining the scene. Door-to-door inquiries were started straight away at houses nearest to the park. Rachel had last been seen in the park at 5:15 p.m. She was later buried at St. Oliver's Cemetery in Mahon County, Cork, on the 28th of October. Police put out an appeal to people who might have been in the regional park that evening and might provide valuable leads in the case to help determine who had attacked Rachel. Dr. Harbison, the state pathologist, completed a preliminary examination of Rachel's body and determined that she had died from asphyxiation. but needed to do a further examination to determine exactly how she died, whether by smothering or strangulation. Police were also trying to determine the reason behind the attack. Was it a robbery or a sexual assault? Rachel was found fully clothed, but her clothes seemed to have been tampered with. Police politely questioned known sex offenders and locals, and they also wanted to speak with an elderly man and some teenage girls seen in the area at the time of the killing. CCTV footage in the area was also collected from local businesses, and by the 4th of November, it was reported in the local paper that police were looking to collect DNA samples to compare to samples found on Rachel's clothes and under her nails. More than 1,000 males from the area gave samples, but police would not give an indication of what type of material containing DNA was collected from Rachel. On Friday, the 10th of November 2000, news broke that someone had been arrested for questioning in relation to Rachel's death. It was the arrest of a 16-year-old male who was brought to Garda Station in Cork and questioned that night. The teen appeared before a special sitting of the Cork District Court and was charged with the murder and rape of Rachel. He couldn't be named as he was a minor, but it was said that he was from the Ballincollig area. He was remanded at St. Patrick's Juvenile Centre in Dublin. The trial began on May 1, 2000, at the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. Rose Keeley, Rachel's mother, was the first to take the stand. She had told how the dogs had returned to their home an hour after Rachel left to take them for a walk. She said that her youngest daughter, Elizabeth, and she had gone out to search the park for her daughter around 6 p.m., and they called out for Rachel. Elizabeth said she thought she had heard a scream as they continued to search for Rachel. They met the defendant, and they said hello to him as they knew him as he was a neighbor who lived around the corner from their house. Rose said she considered asking him if he had seen Rachel, but thought that she might sound paranoid, so she didn't. 4 boys who had seen the accused on the evening of Rachel's death were also called to testify. They stated that he behaved normally and that they had watched TV at a friend's house around 6:30 p.m. Afterward, they had gone to the regional park to ride motorcycles, but they had left immediately because there was police nearby. The accused had no insurance or road tax for his motorcycle, and he had left it behind in the park. Dr. Harbison took the stand and stated that Rachel had been chased down and most likely dragged to the location where she was found. He said that she had been placed in the fetal position after being strangled in a different area. Dr. Harbison also mentioned that there was no evidence of forced sexual assault, but that her clothes were disheveled. The police told the court that the accused had provided a hair and saliva sample, but refused to give a blood sample as he was afraid of needles. Dr. Maureen Smith told the court that the forensic evidence she collected included fibers taken from Rachel's fleece jacket that matched the fibers from a jumper taken from the accused's bedroom on the day of his arrest, as well as fibers collected from Rachel's pants that matched the fibers of the jumper he was found with, along with semen recovered from Rachel's undergarments and outerwear that matched the DNA the accused had provided. Dr. Smith's evidence was lengthy, and there were concerns that one of the jurors had fallen asleep during her cross-examination, but the court had assurances that this was not the case, and so the trial continued. On Wednesday, the accused's mother said the police came to their house while investigating, and her son was worried about getting in trouble for driving his motorbike without insurance or tax. Someone told him he could get 3 years, so he decided to leave the area, even though she told him not to, as the guardian might think he was involved in Rachel's death. She stated her son was innocent. The accused's father testified that his son left school at 14. The accused was a talented athlete and Gaelic footballer who could have played for the Cork junior team. He was the oldest of 4 children from a stable background and good area, living near the Achilles. They knew Rachel casually, as the accused went to school with her brother. The accused also took to the stand, and he told the courts that on the day of the killing, he had called to his girlfriend's workplace. They had been seeing each other for around 2 years. He stated police had called to him a week before Rachel was killed, giving him a green form which accused him of dangerous driving and driving without insurance and tax. It was a warning and not a summons, but he knew if he was caught again that night in the park, he'd get done for it. This is why he abandoned the bike and why he was going to run away. He said he had met his friends in the park at 5 p.m. after work and went to his friend's house 10 minutes later, but had to admit he went back to the park at 5:20 p.m. after a former babysitter gave evidence that she had seen him in the park at around 5:30 p.m. that day. He agreed with the evidence his friends gave about them leaving the park at 6:30 p.m. to go watch TV at a friend's house and returning to the park at 8 p.m. when he abandoned his bike after seeing police. The accused also admitted that he packed his bags to leave after the police contacted him 2 days after Rachel's death. He also admitted providing false information on the questionnaire about his whereabouts. When he tried to leave, he could not get a train or bus because it was the Guinness Jazz Festival that week, making it nearly impossible to find any mode of transportation. The police soon apprehended him, and since he was a minor, he was returned home 2 days later. They called him and took a saliva sample as part of the ongoing investigation. In court, he also stated that he had not seen Rachel for at least a month, and he had no contact or close contact with her. The DNA evidence was challenged by the defense, and a second expert was called to provide testimony. The expert said the test tubes used to collect the samples were not sealed properly, and there was a theoretical possibility that the samples could have been contaminated. But she also stated that this was unlikely, unless it was done intentionally by an individual. Additionally, it was mentioned that all the samples collected were blood samples, except for the accused, who had provided a saliva sample. Closing arguments then began, and the defense stated that the prosecution was blinded by science, and the jury should remember what happened to the Birmingham Six. Anyone not familiar with this case should definitely look into it. And it was possible for forensic evidence and DNA to be incorrect and misleading. The prosecution said that the accused's parents had lied in the witness box to protect their son and were helping him to leave the country to go stay with his uncle in the UK and not to visit a girl he knew in Kilkenny. The uncle had moved from Ireland 2 years earlier after being convicted of a serious crime and served a prison sentence for it. On Tuesday, the 18th of June, the jury returned after 4.5 hours of deliberation and after being sequestered in a local hotel overnight. They found the defendant guilty of murder and rape by a majority of 10-2. He was sentenced to life for her murder, and the sentence for rape will be determined at a later date in the year. An application for an appeal was denied. The trial lasted 26 days over a period of 7 weeks. The following day, the accused was publicly identified in the press as Ian Horrigan. As he was no longer a minor, he had turned 18. He lived in close proximity to the Achilles Keeley family, who had moved house after Rachel's funeral, as they could not bear living so close to the family of the accused. On November 22, 2002, Horrigan appeared in court again to be sentenced for the rape. He received a 10-year sentence to be served concurrently with his life sentence for murder. His request for an appeal was denied. In January 2006, Horrigan applied for leave to appeal in the courts. His legal team argued that the judge's instructions to the jury were misdirected and misleading. The jury should have been informed that forensic evidence is not infallible, and they should have been told that Seaman's body could have been deposited on the scene several days before being discovered. The Court of Criminal Appeal agreed with Horrigan's arguments, and his conviction was overturned. A new trial was ordered, which took place in February 2006. Horrigan admitted to manslaughter, but the state rejected this plea. Dr. Cassidy, who replaced the ill Dr. Harbison, concluded that Rachel died from an arm lock around her neck, leading to cardiac arrest. Horrigan didn't testify this time. The jury deliberated for hours before finding him guilty of rape, but not murder. convicting him of manslaughter instead. He received an 8-year sentence with 6 years suspended, considering his time served and lack of prior convictions. The Keeley family chose not to give a statement, leaving them and the public outraged by the outcome. The Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, immediately filed an appeal, as they also believed the sentencing was too lenient. On April 19, 2007, the prosecution appeared before the Court of Appeal to request an increase in Horrigan's sentence. The judges agreed with the DPP and determined that Horrigan's sentence did not match the severity of the crime. A sentence of 12 years for each charge, to be served concurrently, was imposed. The time Horrigan had already served would be deducted from this. This meant that Horrigan would not be released until 2010 at the latest, requiring him to serve an additional 3 years. The Keeley family were relieved with the sentencing, as Horrigan was placed on the sex offenders list. However, his criminal history continued. In 2007, he was charged with armed robbery while out on bail for Rachel's killing. He attacked an elderly couple, stole €1,500, and escaped in their son's car. Horrigan initially denied the charges, but was found guilty. However, his conviction was overturned due to issues with the search warrant, leading to a retrial where he pleaded guilty to robbery and theft, receiving a 4-year sentence. In March 2013, it was reported that Horrigan was involved in a violent incident while in Whitfield Prison. He had beaten up Jared London of the notorious McCarthy-Dundon gang, and he had beaten him to a pulp. Horrigan had attacked London in retaliation for an attack by Dundon on a friend of his. Sources from the prison told newspapers that Horrigan was a head case and that he was moved out of the prison for his own safety. Ironically, only a few months later, Horrigan would be released from prison after serving his time for the robbery. When he left prison, he moved in with his girlfriend Teresa O'Neill, who lived just around the corner from Dundon's home place in Limerick. Teresa's brother, a convicted rapist, Thomas O'Neill, was involved in the Great Low Woods gang rape in County Clare in 2004. At the time, Thomas O'Neill was also the boyfriend of Dundon's ex-girlfriend. From here on in, there is a lot of overlapping with dates and convictions, but I think I've got it right. So bear with me. On the 13th of September 2013, Horrigan was arrested again, this time in relation to a shooting in Limerick. A man stood outside his home the evening before and had been shot, suffering a number of pellet wounds to his chest from a shotgun. A trial took place in January 2015, and Horrigan completed not guilty to the possession of a shotgun with the intent to endanger. He was found not guilty. However, in November 2013, he robbed a shop in Limerick. He had entered the shop, and the man behind the counter tackled Horrigan, but he got away, leaving the scarf he was wearing behind. Of course, when police got the scarf forensically tested, it led back to Horrigan. He was found guilty in 2015 and sentenced to 5 years in prison, with 1 year suspended. By 2016, it was expected that Horrigan would be released once more from prison. His girlfriend posted on Facebook that he would be home for Christmas. But by March 2017, his home in Macroom in Limerick was raided by police, and €3,000 worth of heroin was discovered. 6 months later, a shop in Mallow, County Cork, was robbed at knife point, with nearly €1,400 taken. Within 4 weeks of that robbery, the media reported that Horrigan had gone on the run. He fled to the UK, and police launched a manhunt because he was on the sex offenders list. He was in breach of his conditions, and police had to know where he lived at all times. In June of 2018, Horrigan appeared in court again and admitted to the drugs found in his home. He was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months, with the 6 months suspended. In December 2018, he was in the courts in relation to the off-license robbery, and again he pleaded guilty. He received a 6-year sentence, with 2 of those suspended. He was due for release in 2022. On the 26th of March 2022, Horrigan attacked a woman in her 60s and a man in his 20s with a hammer, leaving the man in critical condition. He was charged with 4 offenses against the state and remanded in prison. He appeared in court in December 2022 and is set to face trial again, but no date has been set. In September 2022, Horrigan was in court again for breaching conditions put on him as a sex offender. He did not notify the Guardian again of a change of address, and he joined Tinder. He was sentenced to 12 months in prison. Rachel's parents have stated that they don't care how long Horrigan spends in prison, as it won't bring back their Rachel. This was not aimed towards Horrigan's other victims, but Horrigan himself. If the justice system didn't always work within these outdated laws, and if the judges had power of discretion, a lot of people would be saved from criminals like this. Horrigan is only 38 years old and has a long life ahead to cause mayhem in this country. Where will it end, and how many more victims will there be? Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of the Hawks couple. Thomas and Jackie Hawks set out on a journey that would lead them straight into the grasp of tragedy. Unaware, they made the decision to sell their prized possession, their luxurious yacht, which would plunge them into a dark abyss. Imagine the sun glistening on the calm waters, a final voyage on their treasured vessel, and a potential buyer about to finalize the deal. As the sails billowed in the wind and the waves murmured their secrets, the Hawks ventured into the unknown, oblivious that this very journey would become their eternal shroud. Thomas Hawks and his brother Jim Hawks grew up on a farm in the heart of California. They shared a passion for surfing the rolling waves and navigating the vast open sea. However, life's twists and turns saw Thomas answering the call of duty, trading the embrace of the ocean and joining the military. He even ventured into the harsh battlegrounds of the Vietnam War, leaving his mark as a veteran. Despite this, his resilience never wavered, and he transitioned into the realm of justice, becoming a dedicated probation officer. Meanwhile, Jim's path led him into the uniform of a police officer, eventually rising to the esteemed position of police chief. Service and duty ran deep in their veins. Thomas was a dedicated bodybuilder. He had sculpted his body, a testament to his unwavering commitment to physical strength. His impressive physique was a symbol of his indomitable will. Life took its course, and Thomas married, bringing 2 sons, Ryan and Matthew, into the world. However, like the changing tides, the journey of their relationship faced unexpected turns, and they ultimately ended up divorcing. Thomas found himself in Prescott, Arizona, starting a new chapter in his life. His sons followed, drawn to their father in this new land. Then, in an unexpected but positive twist of fate, Thomas crossed paths with Jackie. They fell in love, and their hearts entwined, sparking a love that burned brighter than the Arizona sun. However, Jackie carried scars not of the heart, but of life's cruelty, as a past accident had left her unable to bear children of her own. Yet, her love knew no bounds, as she embraced Thomas's sons as her own flesh and blood. This couple had always faced life's demands, with unwavering determination. They toiled ceaselessly, their dreams woven into their hearts. Their aspiration to own a vessel, a testament to their hard-earned rewards, became a reality as they bought themselves a 55-foot yacht. They named it Well-Deserved, a name their loved ones deemed as a fitting and well-deserved reward for their unyielding work ethic. They took the vessel to the next level by equipping it with the most advanced technology. With retirement's golden years ahead, Thomas and Jackie set sail along the picturesque West Coast. Mexico's exotic shores, California's rugged coastline, and Catalina Island's enchanting beauty became their playground for the following 2 years. They were without a doubt living the dream they had so ardently envisioned. Life being an ever-evolving story, new chapters beckoned. One of Thomas's sons began a family of his own, with the promise of a grandchild on the horizon. Anticipation filled their hearts, the prospect of becoming grandparents, a beacon of joy. Thomas and Jackie then considered the idea of returning to Arizona to be close to their expanding family, and so they made the difficult decision to part with their beloved boat. they decided to sell it in Newport Beach, California, little knowing that this decision would thrust them into the maze of fate, leading to a tragedy they could never have anticipated. The dreams they had so faithfully pursued would take an unexpected and heart-rending turn. In November 2004, they listed their well-deserved yacht for sale at $435,000 through an advertisement in a magazine, choosing to bypass the conventional broker route to save on hefty commissions. With the high price tag for their beloved yacht, which was valued near $500,000, they were confident that the vessel's well-maintained condition would attract eager buyers. But fate had other plans. The first person who responded to their advertisement was not who they had expected. The mysterious individual who reached out was named Skylar Dillion, and what happened next exceeded their expectations. Initially, they were doubtful when they met Dillion. Thomas, a former probation officer, couldn't help but wonder how someone so young had acquired so much wealth. Skylar's explanation, which included a previous career as a child actor, being part of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers cast, and appearing in commercials, had made him rich. Skylar Dillion made a great offer, a full cash offer, sweetened with an additional $15,000 for some personal items he wants to keep on the boat. To further reduce the Hawks' hesitation, he arrived at the meeting with his pregnant wife, Jennifer Henderson, and their young child. Their seemingly happy family had an effect, slowly melting away the Hawks' worries as trust gradually grew. However, under their friendly exterior, Skylar and Jennifer were hiding a treacherous deceit that would lead to serious consequences. The Hawks were unaware of this, as they had developed a strong trust in Dillion. The sea trial, a normal part of boat sales, was set for November 15, 2004, and turned out to be a significant day. Shortly before the trial, on November 12, 2004, the Hawks went on a meaningful trip to Santa Catalina Island near the Los Angeles coast. It was a bittersweet occasion, celebrating the upcoming sale of their beloved boat and one final sail on it. Friends and family were told that a buyer had been found, and the sale was close. On November 15th, as the morning sun illuminated the scene, Skylar and his wife arrived with two men, one slender and the other muscular. The Hawks were surprised by the presence of these two individuals, sparking suspicions. However, Dillion quickly eased their concerns by stating that they were merely acquaintances. He clarified that the well-built man was his accountant. After these explanations, Jennifer and the child stayed behind, while the others boarded the boat and set off on their journey. They slowly navigated into the vast open waters, leaving their familiar world behind. Little did they know, this voyage would be their last, mysteriously marking the final time anyone would see them. As the sun set and darkness descended, Carter Ford, the port captain of the Lido Isle Yacht Club and a close friend of the Hawks, looked forward to their evening meeting with anticipation. Plans were in place and excitement filled the air. However, when night fell over Newport Harbor like a heavy blanket, an unsettling message disrupted the peace. Jackie called with troubling news that made Ford shiver. The Hawks were on a sea trial, which seemed routine, but something felt off. The buyer and his group had kept them out on the water longer than expected, leading to uncertainty. The Hawks promised to contact once they returned, and this was the last anyone heard from them. When the sun rose again, the yacht had returned to Newport Beach, but the couple was nowhere to be found. A puzzling mystery unfolded, as they seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Days passed with no word to their loved ones, their phones silent. To add to the mystery, Jackie's SUV was also missing, leading some to wonder if they had gone on a sudden road trip to enjoy their recent financial success, choosing to disconnect from the world as they celebrated. But the dark reality became clear. The Hawks were not on vacation. Something more sinister had happened to them, and it was only later that they realized this. A week passed, and the unusual silence from the Hawks sparked many questions and concerns. Their loved ones felt the weight of their absence, with a fear that something was wrong. The family turned to Carter Ford in desperation, asking him to go out to the well and investigate. As Ford boarded the boat, he felt a deep sense of concern. Everything seemed to be in disarray, with a lone white towel hanging ominously from one of the portholes. The family was disturbed by the strange scene and immediately took action by filing a missing persons report. Detectives were called to the scene. They proceeded cautiously, breaking the lock on the cabin door and entering. Inside the boat, there were no signs of violence, but a sinister presence seemed to be lurking in the shadows. Their attention was drawn to a white towel stained with fresh ink, hidden between the bed and the wall. It made them stop and think, prompting disturbing questions. A receipt nearby revealed a troubling list of items: bleach, cleaning supplies, heavy-duty trash bags, and Tums, an antacid. The detectives began to connect the pieces of this dark puzzle. The cleaning supplies seemed well suited for a murder, with the trash bags to dispose of evidence, bleach to clean away any traces, and Tums possibly used to calm a stomach unsettled by the horrific acts. The boat had secrets that scared everyone who entered. Investigators were determined to find out the truth about the yacht's buyers, Skylar and Jennifer. A surveillance team was quickly put together to follow them closely. Undercover officers followed the Dillians, observing them living their daily lives, seemingly unaffected by suspicion. They were regular volunteers at a local church, and Jennifer's work as a hairdresser presented no unusual facets. To the world, they appeared utterly ordinary, masking their true nature with chilling adeptness. As detectives delved deeper into their backgrounds, a grim portrait emerged. Skylar Dillian's history bore the stain of a prior conviction for burglary, landing him on probation. Financial scrutiny revealed that the couple was drowning in a staggering $87,000 worth of debt, a dire financial abyss. The investigators were puzzled by a question: how did the couple manage to buy a yacht when they were struggling financially? After looking into Skylar's claims of fame on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they found out he was just an uncredited extra in a few episodes. To add to the mystery, the couple was living in Jennifer's parents' garage. Their desire to own a yacht didn't match their financial situation, leaving the detectives confused. The more they investigated, the more confusing the situation became. Dillian was being questioned intensely, but he stuck to his story that he had bought the yacht legally. Surprisingly, he admitted that the money came from selling drugs. Things got even more intense when he revealed that he had handed over a briefcase full of cleaned money from Mexico, mostly in $100 bills, to Tom. Interestingly, Skylar said that the Hawks had asked him to help with setting up a bank account in Mexico, so they could start a new life there. He also mentioned that Tom and Jackie had given him power of attorney, allowing him to control their money and transfer it to Mexico. To strengthen his story, Skylar showed what seemed to be a real power of attorney document with signatures that looked real. Despite denying any role in their disappearance and suggesting the couple may have gone to Mexico, doubts remained. Cell phone records showed the Hawks' phones were near the Mexican border the day after the sea trial with Skylar. Frustrated detectives went back to square one and refocused on the Hawks family, prioritizing the safety of the couple above all else. They sought answers by going to the national news, where a family member appeared on camera asking for help in finding the missing couple and their car. The mystery only grew deeper, capturing the world's attention with its twists and turns. An American citizen in Mexico called in, sparking action in the investigation. He had seen the car they were looking for on the news, and it was right in front of him. Authorities went to a house near Ensenada in Mexico and found the Hawks' car. Despite the Hawks being missing for over a month and the fear of something bad happening, there was hope that this could be them. There was a glimmer of optimism. Maybe this was the breakthrough they needed. A Mexican federal agent knocked on the door, leading the way. The names Skylar Dillian and Jennifer came up in the Spanish conversation. The man at the door had a chilling connection. He was an old surfing buddy of Skylar. He casually mentioned that Skylar had given him the car, and then Jennifer, his pregnant wife, had driven him back to the US. The detectives quickly collected samples from inside the car and found Skylar's DNA on a heater knob, a signal, and struggling to solve the mystery. Armed with the unsettling revelation, the investigators received a tip that Skylar was going to flee. He had asked his probation officer for permission to leave the country, which helped the quick-thinking detectives quickly catch him for money laundering, the crime he had confessed to earlier. Investigators arrived at the garage apartment where Jennifer's parents resided and found a collection of personal items belonging to Tom and Jackie, such as their camera and driver's licenses. Upon inspecting Jackie's driver's license photo, they were surprised to see a striking resemblance to the notary's description, raising further suspicions about her involvement and the legitimacy of her actions. The investigation took a darker turn, shedding light on the unsettling idea that more people may be involved in this mysterious disappearance than previously thought. As the lies began to unravel, it exposed an intricate web of mysteries and secrets waiting to be revealed. In the garage, investigators found a business card belonging to an LAPD detective who worked with Interpol. They contacted the Interpol agent to discuss their investigation into Skylar's possible involvement in the Hawks' disappearance. The Interpol agent then shared that he had encountered Skylar a year earlier during a murder investigation in Mexico involving an American citizen. This connection raised the possibility that Skylar might have been involved in both cases. The main challenge was to find evidence. Detectives found something strange on the yacht. In photos, it had 2 anchors, but in reality, only one. Their suspicions grew as they realized the discrepancy. A chilling theory started to form. Detectives linked anchor absence on yacht to couple's disappearance, due to Skylar's ruse concealing sinister plot to steal prized possession. Needed undeniable proof. The net was tightening. Jennifer's actions revealed her involvement in the plot. Her effort to drain Hawks' account was evidence of her awareness of the situation, despite not being on the boat. But at a crucial moment, detectives identified a name in the power of attorney papers, a name that would shift the course in solving this puzzling case. The name belonged to a man who had witnessed the significant transaction, a man named Alonso. Alonso, who was only 19 at the time, resided with his parents and worked as a prison guard. A bond had developed between him and Dillian, while the latter was imprisoned for theft. Skylar had convinced Alonso to accompany him to the meetings. He was the slim man who had gone with him on the sea trial. Offering leniency in his punishment, they made an agreement with Alonso, pushing him to share his perspective and expose the chilling truth about the Hawks' destiny. As the tape recorder started playing, Alonso began to tell a frightening story. He revealed details about a man named John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was introduced as an accountant by Skylar. However, Kennedy was not an ordinary man. He was actually a notorious gang member and former convict known as John F. Kennedy. Alonso explained how they had planned a dangerous scheme that would bring disaster to the Hawks. Their evil plan involved kidnapping a couple and taking them out to sea to throw them overboard. The frightening story began when John F. Kennedy pretended to be seasick and went below deck. Thomas, concerned for him, went down to check on him and fell into their trap. Skylar followed, and together they attacked Thomas. Amidst the chaos, Jackie asked worried questions. Alonso grabbed her, used a taser to immobilize her, handcuffed her, and took her to another part of the boat. Both Thomas and Jackie found themselves helpless, with their eyes and mouths taped shut. In those harrowing moments, as Jackie struggled to scream through her gag with tears of desperation flowing, Thomas offered a small gesture of solace. Handcuffed together, he tenderly stroked her hand with his fingers, a silent attempt to comfort her in the face of the grim fate that awaited them in the merciless hands of their captors. The grim saga continued as they were taken into the kitchen area, where the power of attorney awaited their reluctant signatures. The chilling ultimatum hung in the air like a death knell: cooperate, and perhaps they would be spared, or resist, and death would be their fate. The boat steered into the haunting depths of the ocean near Catalina Island, a place once filled with cherished memories for Tom and Jackie. On the deck of the vessel, they were bound together with a rope, a ghastly prelude to the impending horror. Dillian then disengaged one of the anchors from the boat's bow as he dragged the chain along, the dreadful sound echoing in their ears. They had heard that sound countless times before, but this time, it signaled their inexorable doom. Jackie's pleas for her life were heartbreaking, as she yearned to see her grandchild and believed she was too young to die. Tom assured her they would be together as they faced the cruel reality, being cast overboard into the Pacific Ocean. They were pushed from their vessel, dragged down by the anchor, disappearing into the depths. Unfortunately, their bodies were never found, shrouding their fate in mystery. After completing their evil deed, Skylar began a cruel mission to eliminate any evidence of the Hawks' presence. He collected their precious belongings, including photographs, and heartlessly threw them into the deep ocean, where their memories faded away, abandoned without any regret. With all traces of the couple gone, Dillian and John F. Kennedy tried to return to a sense of normalcy as they sailed back to Newport Harbor, relaxing and fishing as if the terrifying recent events were just a disturbing illusion. Justice caught up with Skylar, Dillian, John F. Kennedy, and Alonzo McChain as they faced 2 counts of first-degree murder. Jennifer Henderson defended her husband's innocence while facing her own reckoning as she too was charged with 2 counts of murder. Her involvement in the gruesome act was revealed, laying bare her complicity. The chilling murders were driven by a strong desire for money. Myron Gardner, an ex-convict and former gang member, played a key role in connecting Dillian with John F. Kennedy, despite not actively participating in the crime. Gardner faced charges of involuntary manslaughter for his part in these events. Justice was served when different juries found them all guilty. Jennifer Henderson was sentenced to 2 life terms in October 2007, without the chance of parole. John Fitzgerald Kennedy received a death sentence on May 1, 2009, and was placed on death row in San Quentin State Prison. Alonzo McChain testified against the others, pleaded guilty, and received a lighter sentence on June 15, 2009, 20 years and 4 months in prison, with the chance of parole in September 2021. In March 2009, Myron Gardner's life changed after spending 4 years in prison. He decided to plead guilty to being an accessory after the crime, which led to the dismissal of the murder charges against him. Meanwhile, Skylar Dillian, also in jail, faced more accusations. He was said to have asked another inmate to carry out a dark plan against his own family members. Things took a darker turn when Dillian was also implicated in the murder of an American citizen named John Jarvie, who was killed in Mexico in 2003. Dillian's cousin and father, who were connected to the Jarvie murder, were considered crucial witnesses in both murder cases. On September 22nd, jury selection began for the trial of Skylar Dillian. Dillian was tried for the murders of Thomas and Jackie Hawks, as well as John Jarvie. The verdict was given on April 10, 2009, with Dillian receiving a death sentence from Judge Frank Faisal in Orange County Superior Court. He was sent to death row at San Quentin State Prison. Before Skylar Dillian was sent to prison, a troubling discovery was made. While incarcerated on March 13, 2008, he performed a disturbing act by partially cutting his own male private part with a razor blade as he wished to remove it. After receiving immediate medical attention, he was taken back to his cell the next day. In an interview, Dillian admitted that his reason for this extreme self-injury was a strong desire to transition to a woman. He had already changed his name from John Julius Jacobson to Skylar Dillian, choosing a gender-neutral name to represent his identity. Defense lawyers claimed that Dillian's need for money to pay for sex reassignment surgery was the hidden reason for the murders of the Hawks. However, it is important to understand that this motive does not justify the terrible crimes he committed. In 2019, Dillian's gender was legally changed to female, and she is now known as Skylar Preciosa Dillian. The Hawks family holds dear the lasting memory of Thomas and Jackie, always engraved in their hearts. These lively individuals, recognized for their adventurous nature, embodied goodness and genuineness. Their destiny took a harsh turn, and even though they have passed away, their spirits persist, shining a timeless light on our recollections. May they rest in eternal peace in paradise. Was that Neil would no longer harm anyone else. The family plans to keep Shannon's memory alive by opening a shelter in her honor. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jessica Camilleri. Jessica Camilleri, the second daughter of Rita and Vince, an Australian-Maltese couple, was born with a mild mental disability. Her IQ was between 55 and 60, placing her in the bottom 1% of the population. People with mild intellectual disability like Jessica learn to communicate and express themselves, but at a slower pace than others. They may take longer to develop skills like speaking, reading, writing, and math, but they can still adapt to daily life. Due to her condition, Jessica was slow in reaching developmental milestones like walking, talking, and coordinating movements. She started school much later than her peers, which made her a target for teasing, discomfort, and bullying from her classmates for being different. As a result, Jessica developed stress, anxiety, and anger, particularly towards females. She also struggled with intermittent explosive disorder, characterized by sudden, repeated outbursts of impulsive, aggressive, and violent behavior, as well as angry verbal eruptions that were disproportionate to the situation. At school, Jessica exhibited aggressive behavior towards both students and teachers, including a notable incident where she punched a male student and refused to release her grip, leading to her indefinite suspension and subsequent confinement at home under the care of her mother, Rita, who received a disability pension to support her. Jessica's behavioral issues were symptomatic of her intellectual disability and struggled with irrational outbursts of anger. Furthermore, she was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, a chronic brain condition that affects millions of children worldwide, making it challenging for her to regulate her behavior. In addition to these conditions, Jessica also suffered from severe bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and autism spectrum disorders, which impacted her judgment, self-awareness, and empathy towards others. She had obsessive tendencies, such as fixating on her three favorite numbers, 2, 3, and 5, each of which she associated with a specific color, yellow, green, and purple, respectively. Jessica would often repeat these numbers to generate random phone numbers, which she would then use to call and talk to men. In one instance, starting in 2018, she began harassing the staff of a meat company in Daylesford, England, even going so far as to threaten the owner's family, claiming she would decapitate them with a chainsaw. Jessica had a persistent fascination with horror movies, particularly the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She would spend hours rewatching disturbing videos, and this obsession often led to furious outbursts when her mother, Rita, tried to restrict her access to these films. Jessica and her mother lived together in a house in St. Clair, a suburb of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Jessica's father, Vince, had divorced Rita during her teenage years due to the strain their daughter's behavioral problems had put on their marriage. Jessica struggled with low self-esteem and a childish, naive outlook, but she also displayed strong narcissistic tendencies. Deep down, she felt she was one of a kind and entitled to special treatment due to her mental disability. This occasionally led her to be exploitative and egocentric. Despite this, Rita remained devoted to caring for her daughter, acknowledging her issues, but feeling a strong sense of responsibility to look after and protect her. Rita even went so far as to reach out and apologize to one of the recipients of Jessica's harassing phone calls, confessing that she was at a loss for how to manage her daughter's behavior. Jessica was very close to her mother, who dedicated her life to taking care of her and meeting all her needs. Instead of sending her to a psychiatric institution for full-time care, her mother chose to keep her at home. In fact, Rita's life revolved around Jessica. The tragic event of July 20th, 2019 was not a standalone incident. In the 6 years leading up to it, Jessica had been convicted twice for assaults that caused actual bodily harm. She had also physically attacked her aunt and her sister's mother-in-law by pulling their hair. But she avoided jail time and was always placed in the care of her mother Rita, the one person who could tolerate her behavior. Jessica had also exhibited aggressive behavior towards women she encountered in the streets and shopping centers, lashing out at those she perceived as looking at her wrongly or making her feel ashamed. On one occasion, she was even barred from a doctor's office after becoming violent towards another patient in the waiting room due to paranoia. In early 2018, Jessica's aggressive behavior continued when she attacked a nurse during a hospital visit with her mother Rita. As a result, she was admitted to a mental health unit for 9 days to treat a severe episode of mood disorder. She was prescribed lithium for her supposed bipolar disorder, along with antipsychotic medications. However, by the end of 2018, about 6 months before the tragic event, Jessica had stopped taking her medication and instead began using natural remedies to manage her conditions. Rita was at her wit's end and paid $2,500 to a medium on Queen Street in St. Mary's, a western suburb of Sydney, in a desperate bid to exorcise the demon she believed was possessing her daughter Jessica. Despite her family and friends warning her about the dangers of living with Jessica, Rita remained adamant that her daughter wouldn't hurt anyone. According to Christy, Jessica's older sister, their mother Rita had a heart of gold, always putting others before herself, including Jessica, who continually refused to seek professional help. Rita's sister often voiced her concerns that Jessica might harm her, recognizing Rita's unconditional love for her daughter. However, Rita's motherly love made her oblivious to these warnings, even on the day before the tragic attack, when she had to take Jessica to a police station due to her threatening calls to strangers. Jessica felt humiliated by her mom in a parking lot after visiting her sister due to a stranger's brief presence. Later, when her mom refused to order food from Red Rooster, Jessica called the restaurant 3 times. She then demanded her mom call a doctor, but Jessica's erratic behavior scared him off. At wit's end, Rita called an ambulance to take Jessica to a mental health facility. On the night of July 20th, 2019, Jessica's most severe episode of rage was about to unfold. In a brutal attack, Jessica dragged her 57-year-old mother Rita by the hair to the kitchen of their own home. There, she savagely attacked Rita with 7 meat cleavers, 4 of which broke under the force of her blows. In total, Jessica stabbed Rita over 100 times in the head and neck, driven by a morbid curiosity fueled by her daily obsession with horror films. The autopsy revealed the full extent of Rita's injuries, which included massive trauma to her head and neck, and death by multiple stab wounds that resulted in decapitation at the 2nd vertebrae in her upper neck. Furthermore, Rita's body showed over 90 defensive wounds, indicating that she was conscious for a significant part of the attack. Enduring extreme physical pain and emotional terror at the hands of her own daughter, whom she had lovingly cared for. Jessica's 4-year-old nephew, the son of her older sister Christy, was present during the attack. The boy had been in Rita's care for a few days due to Jessica's apparent improvement. However, he was forced to witness Jessica repeatedly stabbing his grandmother and ultimately decapitating her. When the boy tried to intervene, Jessica attacked him, causing a minor head injury. The traumatic scene was so disturbing that the young boy began vomiting in response. Jessica called the emergency number from her mother Rita's cell phone, confessing to her murder and claiming self-defense, stating that Rita had attacked her first. However, this was not true, and Jessica had actually committed the brutal act. In reality, after killing her mother, Jessica panicked and repeatedly stabbed Rita's lifeless body, ultimately decapitating her and inflicting over 100 wounds. She then dumped Rita's head in a nearby neighbor's front yard. When the police arrived at their St. Clair, Sydney home, Jessica was outside, her clothes stained with her mother's blood, holding a water bottle. She showed no remorse for her actions and was more concerned about her own fate. Jessica asked the police officers and detectives if it was possible to bring someone back to life after decapitation, believing in the possibility of medical miracles that could reattach her mother's head. The police officer responded that this idea was unrealistic, but Jessica insisted, thinking that doctors could perform miraculous surgeries and reattach her mother's head. She also inquired about the potential consequences of her actions, specifically asking if she would face the death penalty. Upon learning that Australia does not have capital punishment, Jessica felt relieved. Furthermore, Jessica confessed to the police that the idea of decapitating her mother came from the horror movies she obsessively watched. A police officer's body camera recorded a chilling conversation at the crime scene on July 20, 2019. At 11:43 p.m., the first responders described the scene as one of the most horrific they had ever seen. The next day, July 21, 2019, Jessica appeared in court but didn't apply for bail. A friend explained that this was not surprising, as Jessica probably didn't understand the bail process. After a trial that highlighted her long history of mental illness, Jessica was found guilty of manslaughter in December 2020. She had pleaded not guilty to murder due to her disability. In early 2021, Jessica was sentenced to a maximum of 21 years and 7 months in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 16 years and 2 months, which would be September 19, 2035. The prosecutor argued that Rita's brutal murder was the culmination of a lifetime of escalating violence by Jessica, which started with hair-pulling and eventually led to a deadly explosive attack. The prosecutor also stated that Jessica posed a moderate to high risk of reoffending and remained a danger to the community. Christy, Jessica's older sister, said that Jessica had killed and butchered their mother, and for that, she could never forgive her. However, Rita's sister held a different view, hoping that Jessica would get the help she needed and that Rita could finally rest in peace, knowing that Jessica was being cared for by a system that had failed her when she was alive. The judge presiding over the case offered counseling services to the jury members, recognizing that the disturbing evidence they had heard could haunt them long after the trial. The judge also admitted that selecting a jury for Jessica's trial was difficult, as many people were reluctant to participate in a trial involving such a disturbing crime. The judge described Rita's murder as one of the most brutal and cruel cases of homicide a court could encounter, emphasizing that the crime's severity was exacerbated by its occurrence in the victim's own home. Jessica's lawyer revealed that his client had expressed regret in a letter to her family after the crime. In the letter, Jessica accepted responsibility for her mother's death, acknowledging that Rita had not provoked her and taking blame for her actions. However, one of the psychiatrists who evaluated Jessica noted that she struggled to communicate through social gestures and displayed a relatively flat affect. The psychiatrist found no evidence of schizophrenia or hallucinations in Jessica. The conclusion was that Jessica's risk factors could only be managed in the long term with a comprehensive mental health support plan. Since entering prison, Jessica has persistently caused trouble. Only 2 months after her arrival, on September 9, 2019, she got into a fight with another inmate over food trading and threw a teacup at them. Although she was charged with assault in local court the next day, she did not receive any additional punishment. On October 14, 2019, Jessica attacked another inmate, which resulted in her being placed in solitary confinement in her cell for 5 days. On November 3, 2019, she disobeyed an order, and on July 31, 2020, she damaged property, incurring a fine of $200 Australian dollars. Jessica was involved in another assault on November 21, 2020, which led to her being placed in solitary confinement for 7 days. In January 2021, she was convicted of common assault again, but did not receive any further punishment. Jessica has explained her behavior, saying that other prisoners make her life difficult, regardless of what she does or where she goes. She has also stated that prison life is tough and very different from the outside world. On May 15, 2023, Justice Peter Hamill of the Sydney Supreme Court rejected claims that Kaleri's original sentence was too harsh and that the judge who sentenced her had misjudged the severity of her crime. However, Justice Hamill did rule that Kaleri should be resentenced, a decision supported by Justices Christine Adamson and Richard Kavanaugh. The basis for this decision was Kaleri's bizarre behavior, including walking into the street with her mother's head and asking emergency responders if they could reattach it, which demonstrated how out of touch with reality her actions were. After considering the opinions of multiple psychiatrists and a psychologist, Justice Hamill found that Kaleri's intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder meant she only had a basic understanding of what was morally wrong. As a result, he ordered that she be resentenced to 16 years in prison, with a minimum of 12 years before being eligible for parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Banaz Mahmoud. Banaz Mahmoud was born in Iraq in 1985. She grew up in a traditional family with strong religious beliefs. When she was 10, her family moved to the UK, but their cultural values remained unchanged. At 17, Banaz was forced into a marriage with a man 10 years her senior, who spoke no English and was illiterate. The marriage was marked by physical and emotional abuse, which Banaz endured for 2 years before finally finding the courage to leave. Despite her family's disapproval, Banaz started a new life and met a man named Rahmat Suleimani, with whom she fell deeply in love. However, their relationship was kept secret due to the cultural taboos surrounding romance outside of marriage. Tragically, Banaz's family was not willing to let her move on from her past. On January 26, 2006, Rahmat reported Banaz missing to the police, but they didn't take the report seriously, convinced that she was just staying with friends. However, Rahmat persisted, and eventually the police were forced to investigate. Banaz's family had a sinister motive for their behavior, which would ultimately lead to devastating consequences. However, Banaz had found love and happiness with her boyfriend, Rahmat. They had dreams of getting married, having children, and building a happy family life. These fantasies brought Banaz joy and kept her going despite her family's hatred and aggression towards her. Her family had never accepted her husband, and in early October 2005, Banaz noticed that she was being followed by people sent by her father. On October 10, 2005, Banaz went to the police and told them about her life with her husband, the injuries she had suffered, and the surveillance she was under. She shared her fears for her safety and even her life, but the police did not take her statement seriously. For about 2 months, Banaz and Rahmat met secretly, but in early December 2005, they were spotted by people from her clan. This led to a council of male relatives gathering at her family home, where it was decided that Banaz should be killed to restore the family's honor. Banaz overheard this conversation and reported it to the police, but they again did not take her words seriously. 2 weeks later, Banaz's father tricked her into going to a relative's house, where she was attacked. She managed to escape and went to the police, who took her to the hospital. After being discharged, Banaz went to live with Rahmat. However, by mid-January 2006, Banaz's family began urging her to return home to mend their relationship and discuss her marriage to Rahmat. Despite her fears, Banaz agreed to go back to her father's house, believing that her mother would protect her. Before Banaz Mahmoud returned to her family's home, She visited the police station to report her concerns and name individuals who might harm her. However, she disappeared on January 22, 2006, and her friend Rahmat was unable to contact her. Rahmat then filed a missing persons report with the police. The police eventually became involved in the case, and Chief Inspector Caroline Good was appointed to lead the investigation. She organized a large-scale search of properties associated with the Mahmoud family, suspecting that Banaz might be being held captive. The police questioned Banaz's father, uncle, and ex-husband, as well as 3 of her cousins, Omar Hussein, Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Hamid, who were also suspects. Despite the efforts of the police, Banaz's family was uncooperative and refused to help with the investigation. The police found no pictures of Banaz at her family's home, and her family members gave contradictory and false statements about her whereabouts. The police arrested 30 people, including Banaz's family members and cousins, but they all tried to slow down the investigation by giving false information. The police obtained permission to install listening devices in the cells of the arrested men, including Banaz's father, uncle, and Muhammad Hamid. The wiretap recordings revealed that the 3 men had no remorse for their actions and were actually proud of what they had done to Banaz. The recordings revealed that on the morning of January 23rd, the Mahmoud family deliberately left their home, allowing Ali Hussein and Hamid to enter and attack Banaz. The attack lasted for 2 hours, during which Banaz was subjected to beatings and violence. Finally, Hamid strangled her to death with a cord. The wiretap recordings also revealed that Banaz's cousin, Muhammad Hamid, had been involved in the attack and had threatened Rahmat, which became a turning point in the investigation. The police were horrified as they listened to recordings that detailed the brutal murder of Banaz and the perpetrators' proud descriptions of their actions. The investigation revealed that Banaz's body had been stuffed into a suitcase and taken out of London to a derelict house with a garden in Birmingham. Caroline Good, a detective, matched the information she received with the movement data of the arrested phones and determined the search area. Despite the vastness of the area, the work could take a long time, but the criminals themselves helped the investigation by being talkative and reveling in their actions. During the conversation, one of them mentioned putting a freezer back in its place, which gave Caroline a key lead to follow. A police helicopter was dispatched to search the area, and while circling, it spotted a house with a pile of trash in the backyard, including a white, oblong object that looked like a freezer. When the police inspected the area, they started digging in shifts. As they dug, they eventually reached a depth of about shoulder height. At this point, they were about to give up. But then Caroline Good recalled the words of Muhammad Hamama, who had bragged about burying Banaz so deeply that she would only be discovered if someone tipped them off. Caroline convinced the team to extend the search for one more day, and late in the evening of April 28, 2006, the suitcase was found. Banaz's remains were in extremely poor condition, and only dental records and DNA samples could be used to identify her. Her body was folded into a fetal position and hidden in a suitcase, buried under a freezer in the garden of a house in Birmingham. On May 1, 2006, the suspects were charged, but they showed no remorse and were convinced they had done the right thing. After the discovery of Banaz's remains, the police received a flood of people providing alibis for the suspects, claiming they were in public on the day of the alleged murder. In total, 50 people were involved in Banaz's death, and Caroline Good felt anger, disgust, and contempt for the men who participated in the murder. The case eventually went to trial in March 2007, and the prosecutor described the crime as a cold-blooded and heartless execution ordered by Banaz's father and uncle. In June 2007, a jury found all 3 guilty and sentenced them to life imprisonment with minimum terms ranging from 17 to 23 years. The judge condemned the crime as barbaric and heartless, saying that the father had put his status in society above the life of his own flesh and blood. Muhammad Ali was arrested in Iraq in April 2006 for a crime against a young woman named Banaz Mahmoud. The London police worked to extradite him to the UK. In June 2009, Ali was extradited and eventually sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. The last of the 5 perpetrators, Omar Hussein, was hiding in the Iraqi countryside. In December 2009, he got into an argument with his brother and was shot in the leg. He was taken to the hospital, where the police arrested him. Initially, Hussein denied being in London in 2005 and therefore couldn't be involved in Banaz's death. However, UK social security records proved that he was receiving refugee benefits at the time, contradicting his claim. In March 2010, Hussein was extradited and later sentenced to life imprisonment. Donna Ammon, who was in the house at the time of Banaz's murder, was sentenced to 8 years in prison for helping to dispose of the victim's body and obstructing justice. A recorded interview at the police station revealed her family's guilt. Banaz had tried to leave her abusive husband several times, but returned to try again at the insistence of her family. The police's indifference to her plight led to her death, which sparked significant changes in how honor killings are handled. An inquiry into police misconduct was launched, and 9 police officers were prosecuted for their inadequate response. 7 received reprimands, and 2 were dismissed. Caroline Good, a determined detective, not only found Banaz's body, but also secured the conviction of her father and uncle, and brought back the escaped criminals from Iraq. Unfortunately, this wouldn't bring Banaz back to life, or change the fact that her own relatives, who should have protected her, were responsible for her death. Banaz was buried in the Merton and Sutton Joint Cemetery in Morden. A memorial service was held on June 26, 2007, at the MN Auditorium, followed by a granite memorial headstone at her grave. Her family did not attend either service. The memorial was paid for by law enforcement officials working on the Banaz case and the women's rights organization. Ramat Suleimani, Banaz's boyfriend, remained in the UK under the Witness Protection Program but never recovered from her death. In May 2016, 10 years after the crime, he hanged himself, marking his 3rd attempt to end his life. The extent of the problem with police handling of honor crimes is unknown due to the lack of recording requirements. However, estimates suggest that in 2000, there were 5,000 honor killings worldwide. And in 2010, over 2,800 cases of honor-based violence were reported in Iran and Kurdistan. These crimes typically involve women who are perceived to have brought shame to their families or communities. Most cases occur in South Asia or the Middle East, predominantly in Muslim communities. However, cases like that of 19-year-old Banaz Mahmoud, a Kurdish woman living in Britain, highlight the tensions faced by immigrant communities as they struggle to adapt to changing lifestyles. Some groups estimate that thousands of honor crimes go unreported in minority communities in Britain, where women are often taken abroad and forced into marriage or harmed when their modern outlook on life conflicts with their traditional male communities. Banaz Mahmoud, who was murdered in 2006, is a tragic example of this. Her older sister, Beal, urges other women in similar situations not to be afraid to seek help before it's too late. Even today, Beal lives in fear for her life, hiding her identity behind a long black veil that covers her entire body and face, except for her eyes. The story of Banaz Mahmoud is a stark reminder that women who try to escape or live a secret life are constantly in fear of being found and punished. The Metropolitan Police team that investigated Banaz's murder and brought those responsible to justice was awarded for their work in detective investigation. A crucial piece of evidence was a videotape that captured Banaz's nervous testimony, in which she described the violence and oppression she faced at the hands of her abusive husband and the intimidation she suffered from men on the street. She warned of her impending death due to the shame she had brought upon her family. Unfortunately, her warnings were ignored, and she was ultimately killed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lacey Peterson. Lacey Rocha was born on May 4, 1975, to Sharon and Dennis, but her parents divorced when she and her older brother Brent were still young. After the divorce, Lacey's mother married Ron, a dairy farmer, who became a father figure to her and played a significant role in her upbringing. Lacey was a cheerful and outgoing person with an infectious smile and bubbly nature. She loved talking to people and was always eager to engage in conversations, which made her a natural attention seeker. She thrived in social situations and was known for her ability to light up a room with her presence. Growing up on a dairy farm, Lacey developed a strong connection with nature. She spent much of her childhood exploring the outdoors and enjoying the beauty that surrounded her. One of her favorite activities was gardening with her mother, which became a source of joy and fulfillment for both of them. Lacey's love for gardening would later influence her interests and career choices as an adult. Lacey was a cheerleader at Thomas Downey High School, which was a great fit for her outgoing and bubbly personality. She made a strong impression on her school and became the ideal cheerleader. After graduating, Lacey attended California Polytechnic University, where she studied ornamental horticulture due to her interest in plants and wildlife. Lacey frequently visited a friend who worked at a restaurant in Morro Bay. It was there that she met Scott Peterson, a co-worker of her friend. Lacey was immediately attracted to Scott and was smitten. She took the initiative and gave Scott her phone number. Scott quickly reached out, and they surprisingly hit it off during their first conversation. Scott then asked Lacey on their first date, a deep-sea fishing trip. However, things didn't go as planned for Lacey, who ended up getting seasick. After a rocky start, Lacey and Scott's relationship blossomed, and they eventually decided to live together. Before meeting Lacey, Scott had aspirations to become a professional golfer, but as their relationship progressed, his focus shifted, and he chose to pursue a career in business instead. Lacey graduated from Cal Poly in 1997, and Scott followed suit the next year. This milestone marked the beginning of a new era in their lives, full of promise and potential. On August 9, 1997, the couple tied the knot in Ayala Valley, San Luis Obispo County. The beautiful resort setting provided a stunning backdrop for their special day. Surrounded by friends and family, they celebrated their love and solidified their commitment to each other. After getting married, Lacey and Scott embarked on a new business venture, opening a sports bar called The Shack in San Luis Obispo, California. The Shack, owned by Lacey and Scott, started off slowly but eventually attracted a steady stream of customers, with weekends being particularly busy. After several successful years, the couple decided to sell the bar in 2000, seeking new opportunities despite its stable income. Following the sale, they moved to Lacey's hometown of Modesto, California, and purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in an upscale neighborhood in October 2000. Lacey took on a part-time job as a substitute teacher, while Scott worked for a European fertilizer company. Lacey devoted herself to supporting Scott, taking care of the home, cooking, and cleaning. She made sure their home was always warm and inviting. In 2002, the couple received exciting news. Lacey was pregnant, and they were expecting a baby. Lacey and Scott were expecting a baby boy, with a due date set for February 10, 2003. They had already chosen the name Connor for their unborn child. On December 24, 2002, Scott stated that he left their house at 9:30 a.m. to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina. Scott said he left Lacey at home on Christmas Eve morning with a busy day ahead of her. She was planning to watch a Martha Stewart show, clean the floor, bake Christmas cookies, and walk their dog, Mackenzie, at the park. However, one of their neighbors found Mackenzie wandering outside their home around 10:30 a.m. and returned the dog to their backyard. When Scott came home from fishing that afternoon, he said the house was empty, with Mackenzie in the yard, but no sign of Lacey. Her car was still parked in the driveway. Scott claimed he showered and washed his dirty fishing clothes as soon as he got home. After his shower, Scott realized Lassie was missing and became concerned. He called her mother and stepfather, Sharon and Ron, but they hadn't heard from her all day and were worried about her safety. As the day went on and Lassie remained missing, Scott and Sharon decided to report her disappearance to the police around 6 p.m. They stressed to the police how urgent it was to find Lassie, who was 7 months pregnant with their baby, Connor. The police then questioned Scott about his whereabouts and activities on the day Lassie vanished. Scott told police he went fishing at the Berkeley Marina, about 90 miles from his home in Modesto, where he lived with his pregnant wife Lassie. However, from the start, police suspected foul play in Lassie's disappearance. Initially, police didn't treat Lassie's case as suspicious after Scott and his mother-in-law filed a missing person report. Lassie's family defended Scott, and the couple seemed perfect, making it hard to imagine Scott harming his wife. As the investigation continued, police grew suspicious of Scott. About a month after Lassie vanished, they made a stunning discovery. Scott had 2 secret affairs and a long-term relationship with Amber Fry, who contacted police on December 30, 2002, after learning Scott was a suspect in Lassie's disappearance. Amber said she met Scott on November 20, 2002, and thought he was single. 2 weeks before Lassie's disappearance, Scott told Amber that he was a widower and that the upcoming Christmas would be his first without his wife. This revelation raised suspicions among the police, who wondered if Scott had already planned to kill his pregnant wife. To gather evidence, the police asked Amber to make a recorded phone call to Scott, hoping to capture a potential confession. The police informed Lassie's family about Scott's infidelities, and it was when they showed Lassie's mother a photo of Scott and Amber together that she became convinced of his guilt. The search for Lassie was highly comprehensive due to the involvement of the police, her loved ones, and numerous volunteers. In the first 2 days alone, more than 900 people participated in the search efforts. During a press conference, a police officer working on Lassie's case raised concerns that she may not have left her house voluntarily on December 24, 2002. Lassie's disappearance sparked widespread media attention, with the tragic and intriguing tale of a beautiful young woman vanishing from her home on Christmas Eve, captivating the public's imagination. As the public sought answers and speculated about her disappearance, the spotlight on Lassie's case intensified. When Lassie Peterson vanished on December 24, 2002, a $25,000 reward was initially offered for information leading to her safe return. As the investigation yielded no leads, the reward was increased to $500,000 to boost awareness and gather more information. To keep Lassie's case in the public eye, posters were prominently displayed in Modesto, California, and a friend's husband created a website to spread the word. Months later, on April 13, 2003, a couple walking their dog in Richmond's Point Isabel Regional Shoreline Park stumbled upon a gruesome discovery in a marshy area. They found the decomposing body of a male infant. The next day, another person discovered the body of a pregnant woman on the east side of the bay shore, about a mile away from where the baby was found. On April 18, 2003, DNA tests confirmed that the bodies were indeed those of Lassie and her unborn son, Connor. Lassie and Connor were laid to rest at Burwood Cemetery. The autopsy revealed disturbing evidence. The baby had 1.5 loops of nylon tape around his neck and a significant cut on his body. Lassie's autopsy showed even more brutal injuries. 2 cracked ribs, her upper torso hollowed out with internal organs removed, and she was missing her head and limbs. The medical examiner concluded that the baby died in the womb and was expelled from Lassie's body after her death. Investigators from the FBI and Modesto Police Department searched the home of Scott and Lassie, looking for evidence of their involvement in her disappearance. The search turned up several crucial clues, including a hair found in Scott's pliers on his fishing boat. After analyzing the hair, the FBI matched it to Lassie's DNA. In addition to the home search, the FBI also thoroughly examined Scott's truck and warehouse, seeking any evidence linking him to Lassie's disappearance. The FBI searched Scott's boat and found a homemade anchor that he claimed was made from a 90-pound bag of concrete, which he had used to repair his driveway. However, the prosecution believed that Scott had created multiple anchors and used 4 of them to weigh down Lassie's body in San Francisco Bay. The bodies found in the bay were later identified as Lacey and Connor, leading to Scott's arrest near a golf course. Notably, Scott's appearance had changed significantly. His dark brown hair was now blonde. When arrested, Scott's vehicle was found to be packed with various items, including a large sum of cash, survival gear, and camping equipment. The police also discovered 4 cell phones and 2 driver's licenses, one belonging to Scott and the other linked to his brother. This evidence suggested to the police that Scott was attempting to flee the state. Scott's father offered an alternative explanation for the driver's license found in Scott's possession. According to his father, Scott had borrowed his brother's license to get a discount at a golf course. As for why Scott's car was packed, his father claimed it was because Scott was living out of his car to avoid the media, who were camping outside his house at the time. Scott's trial began in June 2004, a year after his arrest. During the opening arguments, the prosecution presented its case to the jury, arguing that Scott had killed Lassie because of his affair with Amber Frey. The prosecution highlighted Scott's suspicious behavior in the days leading up to and following Lassie's disappearance, pointing out inconsistencies in his statements to the police. Scott initially told the police he was fishing on the day Lassie went missing, but later told others he was golfing. The prosecution also noted that Scott asked the police if they had used cadaver dogs to search a park where Lassie was supposed to walk their dog, implying that Scott was aware of the potential crime scene and trying to cover his tracks. Scott's defense team presented a strong argument in court, highlighting that Scott's history of infidelity did not necessarily prove he was guilty of murdering his wife. They reasoned that Scott would not give up his life for someone he had only dated 4 times. The defense suggested that Lassie's hair might have been found in Scott's boat because she had visited the marina with him before. During the trial, 2 of Lassie's relatives testified that Scott showed no emotional response when his pregnant wife went missing. New evidence emerged when a realtor testified that Scott tried to sell their home in January, a month after Lassie's disappearance. Additionally, a salesman revealed that Scott traded in Lassie's car after she vanished. The prosecution viewed these events as incriminating evidence against Scott. Amber Frey, Scott's mistress, took the stand and shared details of their affair. The jury listened to secret recordings of Amber's phone calls with Scott, including one where he lied about being in Paris when he was actually attending a vigil for his missing wife. During the trial, a hydrologist and tide expert testified that it was possible for Lassie's body to have been dumped in the area where Scott claimed to be fishing on the day Lassie went missing. However, the defense team argued that there was a lack of credible evidence directly linking Scott to the crime. Their theory was that someone had kidnapped Lacey on Christmas Eve 2002, holding her captive until she gave birth to Connor, and then disposing of both bodies in the San Francisco Bay. The defense attorney emphasized that there was no concrete evidence to connect Scott directly to the crime, and that other suspects could have been responsible. A significant issue arose during the trial when a juror was removed and replaced with an alternate due to misconduct. The dismissed juror had conducted unauthorized research on the case, violating legal procedures. Additionally, the foreman of the jury asked to be removed, and it was determined that his removal was necessary to ensure a fair and just trial. On November 12, 2004, a California jury found Scott guilty of 2 murder counts: first-degree murder for killing his wife Lassie, and second-degree murder for killing their unborn son Connor. The charge of first-degree murder for Lassie's killing carried special circumstances because of the involvement of the fetus, making Scott eligible for the death penalty. After his conviction, the trial entered the penalty phase to determine his punishment. In this phase, the jury considered various factors, including Scott's prior criminal history, circumstances that aggravated the crime, and circumstances that mitigated it. The jury unanimously agreed that Scott should receive the death penalty. After reviewing the evidence, the judge upheld the jury's verdict. He concluded that Lassie's murder was cruel, uncaring, heartless, and callous, which led to Scott being sentenced to death. As is automatic in such cases, the sentence was appealed, and the California Supreme Court heard the case in June 2020. During the appeal, Scott's lawyers presented several arguments. They claimed that some potential jurors were unfairly dismissed, that 2 jurors were improperly allowed onto Scott's boat, and that the trial should have been moved to a different county due to biased questionnaire results, which showed that almost half of the potential jurors thought Scott was guilty before the trial even started. The state countered that there was no evidence to support the claim that any juror was unfairly dismissed, and that none of the 12 jurors who ultimately decided Scott's fate were biased. In August 2020, the United States Supreme Court upheld Scott's conviction, but overturned his death sentence. In 2004, a judge resentenced Scott to life in prison without parole, which led to his transfer from San Quentin State Prison to Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. Around the same time, on April 1, 2004, President George W. Bush signed the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, UVVA, into law. Lassie's mother and stepfather attended the signing ceremony. Lassie and Connor's law was designed to provide legal protection for unborn children in cases where their mothers were victims of violence. The legislation recognizes the unborn child as a separate legal entity from their mother, making it a crime to harm or kill the unborn child during an attack on a pregnant woman. The law acknowledges that an unborn child is a victim of violence and deserves the same rights and protections as any other human being. In the summer of 2003, the body of 36-year-old Sabrina Payne was found in a field near Tremont, Illinois. Sabrina was a black female who was known to support a drug habit with prostitution. Sabrina had last been seen at her home 2 days before her body was found. The original autopsy failed to determine a cause of death, leaving some of the detectives to believe she had overdosed. One detective, however, felt uneasy about that assumption. His suspicions were confirmed as more bodies were found in Peoria and Tazewell counties over the next year. On February 5, 2004, the body of 36-year-old Barbara Williams was found in a ditch near Edwards, Illinois. She was found partially clothed and lying face down in the snow. She had been seen alive between 9 and 10 p.m. the night before. An autopsy showed that she had multiple contusions and abrasions on her body. Toxicology showed that she had fatal levels of cocaine in her blood. At this point, police were not ready to call this a murder or entertain the idea of a serial killer preying on black drug-addicted prostitutes. In October of 2004, 32-year-old Shakonda Thomas was reported missing. She had last been seen by her family in August. Shakonda was known to disappear at times, but when she didn't come back after several weeks, her family reported her missing. Shirley Ann Trapp was also reported missing in the late summer of 2004. She was seen 3 days before she was reported missing. Tamara Walls was reported missing in September of 2004 after not being seen for 3 weeks. All 3 missing women were also black females known to support a crack cocaine habit with prostitution. 36-year-old mother of 8, Laura Lawler, disappeared from her home after leaving with a man and woman. Her longtime partner searched for her but only was able to determine she had been with a man named Larry. Her boyfriend, and father to her 7 daughters and 1 son, describes Laura as the love of his life and a beautiful soul. The two had experimented with crack cocaine, and Laura seemed to struggle with addiction before her disappearance. On September 25, 2004, Linda Neal was found on King Road in Tazewell County. She was found nude along the side of the road. Linda, like the other women, was known to be part of the drug scene in Peoria. At this point, police had determined there was likely a serial killer stalking black females in the Peoria area. A task force was formed, which one detective states would have occurred much quicker if the victims had been white females. While police desperately searched for the killer, they kept a close eye on women in the community at risk. Despite their efforts, on October 15, 2004, Brenda Irving's body was found in a ditch near Farmington. Brenda was found nude, and an autopsy determined that she had been strangled and suffered blunt force trauma to her head. She also had fatal levels of cocaine in her system at the time of her death. Her children had feared for their mother's safety, as she had known many of the women who had been killed or disappeared from central Illinois. Brenda struggled with drug addiction. Despite detectives' best efforts, the case proved difficult to solve. They followed thousands of leads, but finally got the lead they were waiting for in December of 2004. 35-year-old Vicki Bomer was arrested for theft. From jail, she told authorities that she thought she could help them find the serial killer preying on her fellow sex workers. She believed that a man who had picked her up in July 2004 was responsible. Bomer explained that in July, a man named Larry Bright lured her to his mother's home where they shared alcohol and drugs. Once she was intoxicated, she said Bright attacked her, attempted to rape her, and pulled a knife on her. Somehow, Bomer was able to escape. Police were at first skeptical, as Bomer asked for a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. Why hadn't she reported this back in July? Why wait until she was under arrest? Vicki Bomer claimed she was scared of being arrested for outstanding warrants, which is why she did not come forward in July 2004. A search of her criminal history confirmed the warrants, so detectives decided to take a look at the man named Larry Bright. Larry Dean Bright was born in Peoria, Illinois, on July 8, 1966. He served a 2-year stint in prison at age 19 for burglary and carjacking. According to Larry's family, the time Larry spent in prison changed him for the worse. Larry became more angry and violent and began using drugs. Larry had an injury, which started an addiction to prescription opioids and later crack cocaine. He also developed an addiction to pornography, preferring videos with black women. Larry lived with his mother in a tiny guest house behind her home. Larry enjoyed gardening, creating a beautiful garden bed of flowers for his mother. When the police arrived at Larry's home following the tip, they noticed the beautiful flowers in the garden. Larry was placed under arrest for the unlawful restraint of Vicki. They questioned Larry about the murders, but he denied having any information about the murdered and missing women. Throughout the interview, Larry smoked several cigarettes. Detectives planned to take one of the cigarette butts and test it for DNA, but Larry ate them before leaving the interrogation room. Larry declined to give DNA voluntarily. Police searched Larry Bright's home on January 20, 2005. The investigators dug up the garden, finding several small bone fragments and ashes that were later determined to be human. When the police questioned Larry again, they told him they were digging up his mother's flowers. At this point, Larry broke down and confessed to multiple murders. He even led investigators to the remains of some of his victims. Larry explained that around July 27, 2003, he picked up Sabrina Payne on the south side of Peoria. He drove her to his home, which he shared with his mother. He claimed the two drank and used cocaine before having consensual sex. Larry said he did not intend to kill Sabrina, but he became enraged, thinking Sabrina was trying to rip him off. He strangled her to death and dumped her body near the cornfield where she was found. Larry confessed to picking up Barbara Williams in February 2004. Again, he used drugs and alcohol with his victim. He stated that he once again lost control of his anger and killed Barbara. He claimed he caught Barbara stealing from him. He dumped her body along the road, where she was found the next day. The prosecution believed that after the first two murders, Larry developed a bloodlust. At the time of his arrest, he said, "I knew them I would kill the others I would pick up. I went out hunting." Larry also confessed to killing Laura Lauer. He burned her body in his backyard burn pit, burying the remains in his mother's yard. He said he wanted to destroy the bodies to avoid getting caught. He confessed to killing Tamara Walls and burning her remains. Her jawbone was found in the backyard. He admitted to strangling, beating, and burning Shirley in trap. Shakonda Thomas had the same fate after being picked up by Larry Bright. He burned the woman and buried the ashes in the yard. Because of his attempts to cremate his victims, he was nicknamed the Bone Crusher. Larry said that he attempted to burn Lyndon Neal and Brenna Irving as well, but the attempts were unsuccessful due to the weather. He dumped both women along the side of the road. Larry was facing the death penalty following his January 2005 arrest. In an attempt to spare his mother the embarrassment of a trial and avoid the death penalty, Larry Bright pleaded guilty to 7 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of drug-induced homicide on May 30, 2006. Bright's murders were not considered racially motivated, but detectives believe he was just attracted to black women. He is one of the very few serial killers who chooses victims outside of his race. Larry was sentenced to 7 life sentences without the possibility of parole, to be served concurrently. He was also given an additional 30 years for the drug-induced homicide. As part of the plea deal, Larry will be required to serve 100% of his sentence with no parole consideration. Larry is currently housed at the Shawnee Correctional Center in Vienna, Illinois. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars, but that brings little peace to the families of his victims. The loved ones of Larry's victims want people to know that the women he killed were more than just drug addicts or prostitutes. They were people. They were mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. The serial killer dentist of St. Louis, Glennon Engelman. Dr. Glennon Engelman was born on February 6, 1927, in St. Louis, Missouri. Dr. Engelman grew up on the south side of the city and felt a deep connection to his neighborhood. After serving in the military, Dr. Engelman used his GI Bill to go to Washington University and become a dentist. He opened his dental office on the south side of St. Louis, serving the community he had always loved. Dr. Engelman, who went by Glenn, was married to a woman named Edna Ruth, but they divorced in 1956. By 1958, both Glenn and Ruth had remarried. Glenn was operating his dental office and appeared to be successfully serving the St. Louis community. On December 17, 1958, citizens in Forest Park noticed a bloody man stumbling. The man, James Stanley Bullock, soon passed from his injuries. These injuries were caused by a gunshot. No one could figure out why someone would shoot 28-year-old James Bullock. James Bullock was born on April 17, 1931, in DeSoto. He was raised in Shiloh, Illinois, by his grandparents and later his aunt after his parents passed away. According to an article from 1938, the then 7-year-old was living with his grandparents in 1938 and enjoyed attending school and fishing. James later served in the military before returning to St. Louis to work and go to college. Back in St. Louis, James met Edna Ruth, the ex-wife of Dr. Glenn Engelman. The two married, and 6 short months later, James was dead. An employee at a local sanitarium initially claimed James was there 4 days before his murder, asking to be admitted because he feared for his life. His wife and aunt said this was not true, as the 3 had dinner together on that night. According to his widow and aunt, James was not afraid for his life, and they knew no one who would want him dead. However, Edna Ruth benefited greatly from her husband's death. Ruth had life insurance policies totaling $64,088. While under questioning, Edna Ruth made several weird statements, including telling the police she was married before, but her husband did not know. Who was she married to? Her husband's dentist, Dr. Glenn Engelman. Edna Ruth had lied to James and his family and lied on the marriage application about being married before. Police questioned a local career criminal who was out on parole for an assault at the time of the shooting. They weren't able to tie him to the murder of James, but they did note he lived near Dr. Engelman's office. Dr. Engelman and Edna Ruth both refused to take a polygraph test and denied any involvement in the murder of James Bullock. Dr. Engelman's new wife, Ida, refused to be questioned by the police. A patient provided an alibi for Dr. Engelman. However, another witness said that they tried to find someone at the office around that time and the office was empty. Edna Ruth invested part of the funds she received after becoming a widow into doctor. Been bored being a dentist, so he often ventured into other areas of business. This included buying a trike strip along with a partner, Eric Fry. Dr. Engelman had grown to be close friends with Eric and his wife Sandy. On September 26, 1963, Eric and Dr. Engelman were at the trike strip using dynamite to explode and then fill abandoned cisterns on the property. Eric was lying on his stomach near one of the cisterns when the dynamite exploded quicker than anticipated. Eric was killed instantly and found lying in the bottom of the cistern. Coroner H.D. Steinbeck ruled the death accidental. Mr. Frey's wife had an insurance policy on her husband, which she invested part of into Dr. Engelman's practice. Dr. Engelman divorced Ida and married his third wife, Ruth, in 1967. The couple shared a son, but Ruth hated the close relationship her husband had with a young woman who worked in his office named Carmen Miranda. Dr. Engelman offered to train Carmen to be a dental assistant in his office. Edna felt uncomfortable with the flirting between the doctor and his young assistant. Dr. Engelman, however, claimed he was trying to help people in his community. He hired Carmen's brother, Nick, as well at one point. Ruth was relieved when Carmen met a married man named Peter Holm. Just a few months later, however, Carmen and Eric were walking in a rural area in Pacific, Missouri. The couple were exploring an area known to have caves and scenic paths. A shot suddenly fired, hitting Peter in the head. Peter died instantly, and a hysterically Carmen flagged down the help. Nearby, police found an X on a tree made with tape. The area was familiar to locals as a hunting area, and police believed that the shot was accidental. Police believe someone was target shooting at the X and accidentally struck Mr. Holm. Carmen had a significant amount of life insurance on her husband, totaling $60,000. This is equivalent to around $300,000 in 2024. Dr. Engelman and Ruth divorced soon after, at which time Dr. Engelman married young Carmen, whom he had known since she was a small child. His son lived with Edna, his ex-wife. Despite being married to Carmen, Dr. Engelman and Ruth still met regularly for sex. Dr. Engelman constantly had extramarital affairs, which included previous affairs with Carmen, Ruth, and even Sandy Fry, the wife of his business associate Eric Fry, who was killed by dynamite. Another of Dr. Engelman's affairs was with a patient named Barbara Boyle. On November 3, 1977, someone pretending to be from the farm girl walked up to the farmhouse owned by Arthur and Vernita Guswell in Edwardsville, Illinois. Soon after entering the home, the elderly couple were attacked and both were shot in the head. The wealthy couple left $340,000 to their son, Ronald Guswell. Guess who Ronald Guswell was married to? Barbara Boyle. On April 4, 1979, less than 2 years after the murder of his parents, Ronald Guswell was found dead inside his car outside a hotel in East St. Louis, Illinois. The man had been beaten and shot to death. He had been missing for 4 days when his body was found. Following her husband's murder, Barbara collected his inheritance in addition to several life insurance policies. The equivalent sum of money today would be nearly $1.7 million. Guess who she cut to? Dr. Glenn Engelman. Following the murder of Ronald Guswell, authorities were starting to notice the trend of connected deaths to Dr. Engelman. His patients and community, however, only saw a generous man committed to helping his community and its citizens. Dr. Engelman was not the greatest dentist, however. He often did a sloppy job of making casts for dentures and dental appliances, requiring the work to have to be redone by the dental lab several times. His business was struggling, however, and he soon found himself in debt with the dental lab owned by Sophie Barrera. Sophie Barrera owned a South St. Louis dental laboratory and had grown tired of waiting for Dr. Engelman to pay up by 1980. She filed a lawsuit against the doctor that was set to go to court just a few days after Sophie was murdered. On January 14, 1980, Sophie entered her vehicle in South St. Louis. Shortly after, the vehicle exploded. Police found remnants of a bomb under her charred vehicle. Sophie had told her son before she was in fear of being killed. She believed Dr. Glenn Engelman was dangerous. Dr. Engelman was questioned for 3 hours and then released. Police were certain he was responsible for Sophie's death, but they had to prove it. The public also wondered if the bombing was related to another bombing in the area that was carried out between two mob families fighting for control over St. Louis's labor unions. The evidence indicated, however, that this was not a mob hit. The number one suspect was the man who owed Sophie $15,000. Dr. Engelman had to be stopped, but the police weren't sure how to do it. Detectives soon began having conversations with Dr. Engelman's ex-wife and mother of his son, Ruth. Ruth told police nothing at first, but eventually started to talk. She explained that Dr. Engelman often bragged about killing people. He told her that he had a superpower: he was able to kill without remorse. He had admitted to killing Eric Fry, Peter Holm, and the Guswell family. It was his side hustle, killing for profit. Ruth agreed to help the police, but none of her testimony could be used in court because Dr. Engelman confessed to her while the two were still married. He was protected by spousal privilege. Ruth decided to wear a wire, however, and met up with Dr. Engelman to exchange their son and sometimes just to socialize. They were still having a sexual relationship despite Dr. Engelman's marriage to Carmen. She tried to get Dr. Engelman to confess to her again by asking direct questions. He didn't seem to take the bait at first, and Ruth feared he would kill her next. Ruth suggested police plant a bug in her bedroom and she would invite the dentist over for sex. Dr. Engelman was suspicious, however, and did not say anything that could lead to his arrest. Ruth then met him at a diner wearing a wire, and this time he commented on being homicidally intimate with the widow of one of his victims. He admitted to the murders in great detail, providing just what police needed for an arrest. He explained that he found murder more sexually satisfying than sex. His ex-wife was given a new life in the witness protection program. Carmen, who was no longer married to the dentist, and her brother Nick were brought in for questioning to corroborate the allegations against Dr. Engelman. As possible co-conspirators, they asked for and were granted immunity to testify against the dentist. Carmen told quite the story. She said she was working for the dentist when he suggested she find someone with good benefits to marry. He told her about Eric Fry, whom he said he directed Sandy Fry to marry with all intentions of murdering the insurance proceeds. Soon after she was married, Carmen said Dr. Engelman told her where to go and made sure her husband was shot and killed. He staged it to look like a target shooting accident. Glennon Engelman was finally arrested and charged with murder in 1980. Carmen testified at Dr. Engelman's first trial, for which he was convicted of murdering Peter Holm and given 50 years in prison. The dentist then pled guilty to the murder of Sophie Barrera to avoid the death penalty. Serving a life sentence for that murder in Missouri, Dr. Engelman was back in court by 1985 in Illinois. In 1984, Robert Handy, a convict and acquaintance of Dr. Engelman, admitted to authorities that he had taken part in the murder conspiracy of the Guswell family. He implicated Dr. Engelman, who had bludgeoned Ronald Guswell and shot him, as well as Ronald's widow, Barbara Boyle. Dr. Engelman was given 3 life sentences for the Guswell murders. He also was convicted of federal mail fraud and given a 30-year federal sentence. He is believed to have killed at least 12 people, including conspiring with his first wife to kill her husband, James Bullock, in 1958. Edna Ruth was never charged in the case due to lack of evidence. Barbara Boyle went on trial for the murder of her in-laws, Arthur and Vernita Guswell, and husband Ronald in 1985. The jury acquitted her of the murders of Arthur and Vernita but convicted her of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Ronald Guswell. Barbara Boyle was sentenced to 50 years in prison in 1985. She was granted parole in 2009. Dr. Engelman enjoyed his notoriety in Missouri, often comparing himself to legendary outlaw Jesse James. He is believed to have killed at least 12 people, but the actual number is unknown. Unlike other serial killers, Dr. Engelman was inspired, at least in part, by greed. He also seemed to revel in his ability to not feel remorse. Dr. Engelman died of diabetes-related health issues in 1999 at age 72. He was incarcerated in Jefferson City at the time.